Hi there, on here, Variableplay, and welcome to another open game night.
Open
Woot
game
woot.
All
night.
right.
Pilipintados!
Yes,
Hello,
Yeah.
welcome.
hello.
I love that I can say Pilipintados on
Without us
safely
getting banned. Without us getting banned.
or persecuted.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Denmark. And welcome to Variable Play. And up there with the cool glasses is
Javi
Louis.
here.
yeah,
there,
everyone.
there you go.
Javi.
Javi. And Ron, please introduce our guest.
So we have here Mr. Poggy, Sir Louis.
Yeah. How are you all? It's obvious for the face. Yeah.
Yes. And Juice or Joshua.
Buenos,
Juice
buenos. Hello.
Miniatures. So for the ones who are actually watching this in
we got
the
8.
Pilipintados Facebook group, I think in the comments you should be able to see like some instructions on how to allow StreamYard to see your name or your profile. So you have to allow it because it's a little bit different for Facebook groups. You don't have to. If you want to keep it private, you can just mention your nickname so that people, your friends here, Louis and Joshua can recognize who's making the comment. But if you do want,
we have actually some pretty early comments already.
Yeah,
Yes.
bro. They've been waiting since yesterday, bro. They've been camping outside, man. Nakapila sila.
Wow. We are so honored.
Ito, pila sa bagong iPhone.
So
We're a
honored.
cult. We're actually a cult.
no,
Hi,
I,
Mikey.
Oh, wait. Okay. I'll run it.
Now I am like
I'll run it
truly
for
excited hearing
See-
hearing the word cult.
There's
One
the
of us.
There's the first
so welcome,
example.
welcome Facebook user.
That's what Ron was talking about.
Yes. Thank you for your support, Facebook user.
So we got Juno. Hi, Juno.
Hey, Juno.
Mikey.
Yeah, I kicked out Jake. Hey, go home.
Yan.
This is not your house. Hi,
Well,
Jake,
it's
what's up,
well at
bro?
least Lord Squirtle is watching.
Dapat mas madaming Pilipintado viewers kaysa sa
Oo
Variable.
nga.
Cult paint.
Come on, Shadows
Sure.
represent.
Do you accept the challenge?
Sige, loser paints the board game collection of the,
Well,
of the
The
winner.
variable play, actually.
Parang lugi tayo dyan.
Hey, I'll get that one.
Wait.
I'm not
wait.
entirely sure
This
how
is interesting.
how-
While Denmark does his thing, this
Yes.
is tempting.
Hey, you'll.
I think
you'll
Juno is
you'll
part
regret
of
it.
He's a cultist. He's
Pilipinta-
one of our cultists.
He's a
one
cultist.
of our
Hey,
Nice.
woo,
Si
cultist.
Mikey is in both cults.
Yes.
Uh,
Ano?
I got
It's a member of
distracted.
both orders.
Okay.
Adrian, hi. Of course, Clint is here
Hello.
too.
He's a member of Spending Too Much Money
Club.
Ah,
There's
that
a
could be
club
both.
for that.
Club.
Good evening, Facebook user.
Yes, good evening, Facebook user.
Hey, say it again, Ron.
Here we go.
Say it again, Ron.
Yeah, so there's a in the caption probably of this in Pilipintados, you should be able to see how to accept the StreamYard.
Account
So you go to StreamYard and sort of allow it to access your Facebook group profile. It's a little bit different as than the normal Facebook page. So the ones who are following us already in Facebook, in our Facebook page, you guys don't have to do this. But for the ones who are in the group, because of the privacy mechanisms of Facebook, you can't. So record number, guys. For the first time ever, we have 20 participants.
Yeah. We just
Hello.
needed to invite them.
Great.
Hey, see, we have some people who are really looking forward to this. That they're gonna be learning. Nice.
Thank you, Nico.
Yes.
All right.
But
Pressure,
that's not
Josh.
That's not
Oh.
what we do. That's not what we do in our show. We don't teach people.
Yeah, do we think
Yeah, we
people learn from us? I'm not entirely...
If you're taking lessons from our shows, you people need to make some new life choices.
All right, I think I'm done. So, whoo, there's
so
Q2.
cute.
Oh,
And
sorry,
then,
I
of
clicked on
course,
that.
Mikey. Bandwagoner ako. I go where the cool people are. Yeah,
Ay, naku,
that's true.
Mikey. Kung bandwagoner ka, kamusta wallet mo?
Yeah.
I always
Lagot,
I always
Mikey.
see Mikey. Hey, look, we're winning. Variable Play has 16 viewers. Pintados has 6.
Anyway, you should
seven.
learn to take
Grabe,
a joke. Denmark.
Sir,
Take a
please
joke.
take
Woodwork
please
is
take your
Sina.
pick.
I'm actually gonna take you up on that.
Slow painter kami, Josh, na parang di na babalik yung board game. Pag dumating na sa amin, di na babalik na yun.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
So welcome everybody. So we assume that the reason why you're here is because you have a lot of minis that you want to paint, or at least try getting into the painting hobby,
Yeah.
because it's actually relaxing.
and to be honest, when when we reach out niya kina Louie and kina Joshua, I honestly am so intimidated to paint. Yung nakwento ko pa nga is like, I tried it. In my mind, I knew what I wanted to happen. I did the stroke and it didn't come out the same way.
Yeah.
Na-envision ko siya eh. Na-envision
I
ko.
totally agree with Ron. I am on the same boat of being totally intimidated.
I'm gonna improve the color of the chest plate, Pat, and it just darkened. What
Paint my
happened?
cubes.
Now,
Paint my cubes.
you know what, man? Just changing one letter in that would totally change the whole theme of this show.
All right. So, Ace
Moving
Ace was saying that he's looking forward because his X-Men United minis are coming soon.
Yes.
Excellent.
Oh,
Ganda
those
ng
look
United.
nice. Those
Pretty.
I, on the
I'm
other
actually
hand,
painting some
Milo,
Marvel
Hala
Protocol.
Halapinta, that is the
Woo!
slogan.
Milo's our fellow board gamer admin also. How are you,
Milo is our fellow admin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Milo, for dropping by.
So I
Sir,
guess
sir, paano
this is
tayo
going to
na
be
may
a very
Pilipintados na
lively
nanonood?
episode.
So I guess,
no.
can you
Wait,
guys,
I on the
before
I on the other hand will be bragging. You guys can paint, I can. That's what they said.
Okay.
Hee.
Sure.
I can
Good for you.
paint. Yes. I can.
After Ron says he's so intimidated, no, you just start
Yeah,
flaunting
no,
it.
no.
And the typical Denmark.
I rarely get to brag with these guys because they always beat me in board games. So at least I'm good. at
Tumahimik yung
something.
mga Pilipintados. Sobrang ginajudge ka nila, Denmark. You're like,
That's
They're all
okay.
going like,
oh, the comment stopped, oh.
I don't mind. At least in the board game world, I can paint basic
okay.
painting.
But
So,
before we go into comparisons of painting, and let's kind of go back to the experts here. How did you guys get started? I mean,
Yep.
Pilipintados, it's I don't know if you guys remember that 90s show, Pintados.
yeah, the one with the
And
abilities,
tattoos.
right?
Yeah, it was brought up nga when the name was founded. I think Josh could better tell the story of how the group started.
So-
Yeah. So basically we wanted to have like an umbrella group kasi for all the miniature painters here in the Philippines, because like there was no one big umbrella group. Like there was a Warhammer group, there was a War Machine group, there were even painters for D&D and for other indie, like other smaller games like Malifaux, basta yung mga ganon. But there was no one umbrella group, and we kind of wanted that to happen. So yeah, that's basically it. That's how we came to be.
Cool.
And I just want to add, no, a few weeks ago, fun fact, because me, Josh, and a few friends have a painting Facebook group. And then we were talking about how, syempre nagpapakul kami, kasi Josh is like our father, even if he's the youngest. He taught us how to paint. Or
Wow.
May echo lang
we
ng
all
konti.
learned,
I'll be right
we all
back.
learned on our own way, but Josh
I'll
everyone,
remove your cam first from the stream. Tas join mo na lang later
ayan, yeah.
para ilabas ko muna siya ng studio.
All right, you were saying, Louis, Josh was your father. I mean, your father in
Basically,
painting.
no, like, if you're into miniature painting, you've probably went through a workshop that Josh held. So, nagyayabangan kami lahat sa mga friends namin. I went to Josh's workshop, ganyan. Ako rin, ganyan. And eventually, we found out, the admins and a few of us friends, we all went to the same freaking workshop na pinagyayabangan namin. And there's a photo that all of us are in the same photo. Not all, but majority of us are in that photo.
So
Nandun kami,
basically,
so-
Josh owns all of you.
Which was the never name yung group to like, something to that extent, no? But Josh sort of like helped push mini painting here, at least here in Metro Manila. I like to believe.
Hey, congrats. Good job on
Yeah.
that one. Great job. Great job.
So good, it's a good guess to pick.
So, yung mga questions inyo, the questions that you guys have, we're gonna read that later. So you can keep them and just start firing later after the tutorial. I think yes, there is gonna be a tutorial. So while
Yeah.
we're waiting
Yes.
for Josh to come alive again.
I'm back
There you
there.
go.
There you go.
So
So,
we have-
siguro Josh will just join your cam once when we go to the
Yes, absolutely.
demo. So, yun. Turns out that you are pretty much the Sith Lord,
The
the one who
Godfather.
taught.
Oh Lord.
The
Oh,
The
Up
one
to
who
the
taught.
nation at least. Wala tayong palakarin yung ulo ni Josh.
I like to
Let's
see.
just say the authority on the
Yes.
subject.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good
All
one.
right. Cool.
Medyo,
Pero kasi-
I think you're kind of building me up way too high.
Buti na lang, di ako tutorial. Para nakatamay lang ako dito.
Expectations are high, sir.
Man, I just like putting colors on miniatures. That's it.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, and we saw how good they were.
I
Pero
know what you
And
pulled
there-
off yesterday in an hour or an hour and a half was something that I would have probably taken a week to do.
yes, yeah.
They actually call that speed painting. And it's a technique that Milo, one of our admins, like to do. And I think board gamers here, if after the workshop, if they're interested, you just Google that stuff. You can find like how to paint 100 minis in a day videos.
What?
And it's crazy, man. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit exaggerated,
Why
but people
didn't
do
I
that.
learn
It's
this?
it's a skill. It's a type of painting. It doesn't necessarily yield bad results. Sometimes better results nga than people take longer. So I think it's bagay for board gamers, especially for those who
Yeah.
did the Kickstarter who supported the Kickstarter
Oh my
program
gosh.
recently.
You should
Bagay
see
na bagay.
Simon. Like, makes it heavy because of all those minis.
Oh, Simon is the devil.
Yeah.
Take that back.
Well, no, actually, hindi. Games Workshop is the devil, but
Yeah.
Simon is a slightly lower
It's a
devil.
close second.
Now,
It's right up there.
I see Simon more of that shady guy with a trench coat. Like, you want some minis?
Uy, buddy, gusto mo ng miniatures, buddy?
Sobrang
Hindi
DI na mga
enabler.
cartoons na
Pare,
yun.
may mga paints ako, pare. May mga paints.
Like, Simon has maybe put out like one paint set for Zombicide. They don't really
Ah,
give you
yeah.
the tools. But,
Hey, it's a
something
good
like-
thing that they're here. So let's not delay this any further. We know that most of you are here to actually know the basics. Because when we approached the Pilipintados, we were saying like, guys, treat us as people who don't know anything about painting. It's just like, hey, I opened a box of board games. There's cool minis. I want to paint them. Where do I start? So this doesn't have to be a one and all episode. If all goes well, it could be a series. Why not? Is that okay with you guys? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but maybe would that be okay with you?
But to give context nga, kasi I personally have tried. I've looked at YouTube videos. I've seen those speed runs on painting, and I'm all going like, yeah, but can I actually do it? Like, I'm not sure.
You could.
but
Tiwala
yun.
lang,
So I think after seeing, if you guys should look for Josh's channel, because basically, and I know hopefully you don't take offense of this, it's like sinescuela of learning how to paint minis. It sounds
The,
kulang
the
na lang ng background.
references are strong in you today. From Sid to Sinisquela. Where else are you taking us today, Ron?
Yes, Tito. Yes,
mga-
Tito.
Mga 20 years. Sorry naman.
Alrighty. Showing again. All right. So maybe we're gonna turn it over to Josh and Louie on
Yes.
where we're gonna start and how this is going to happen.
Sorry, my lighting
Take it
is
away,
loose.
boys.
All right,
Alright.
let's go. Hello,
So-
hello everyone, the audience of Variableplay, and of course, everyone else on Facebook, and our very own precious little Tados of Pilipintados. Welcome to our live stream. Thank you for joining us. So, basically, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna show off the absolute basics when it comes to miniature painting, and not just miniature painting, but also like the all the prep work that needs to go before you actually get to the actual painting. So I'm talking about the assembly, the gluing, the texturing, the priming, all of that lovely stuff. No, in my second cam here, I'm gonna be demoing live, but just in case something happens, I made sure to have like extra slides that I'm having the variable play people play in
Gotcha.
the side. So basically, what is miniature painting? It is painting your miniatures. Done. Okay.
No, really?
It's a-
That's what it means?
It's a bit more.
I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah, right. It's
Mind
amazing.
blown.
So
Joshua,
yes.
could you rejoin yung phone cam mo?
Oh
Yeah,
sure.
We can try it out now. Just so people can see your desk too. Your
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful desk.
Yeah, I just suggest for the echo just to drop the volume of your phone.
Yeah, what I did was I put earphones.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's all.
That
Yeah.
should work.
Cool.
That should work.
Oh, okay.
cool.
Yeah, me what I usually do is I just drop the volume of the phone to 0.
I tried
Sa-
doing that. Didn't
Sa
But
pag iPhone,
fix it sa
ayaw
phone
eh.
Samsung rin ayaw eh. Yun.
All
There
right.
you go.
So
All right.
can you see my hands there?
Oh, I'll do it, Ron.
Okay.
Yes, please. All right. See my hands and my tools, my desk, a bit of my belly down here, but that's cool. All right.
Perfect.
So, why miniature painting in the first place? First off, it's always nice to not be looking at a sea of gray plastic when you're playing a game. For me, it
Here.
adds not just to the to the overall look of the game, but it also acts as sort of like a therapeutic thing. The whole painting aspect to me, because we all have stressful lives. We all have those things in our day that just make it not as good as we want to, and miniature painting to me is that kind of stress relieving thing. Like the more I do it, the more I learn about it, the more it's kind of zen. There's a zen aspect to it, and of course, it looks cool. Especially if it's for a game that you really like playing, you like the lore, you like the story, you like the gameplay. Syempre, it's gonna be cool to have that one character be all colored and whatnot.
So
So
it's better. It's way better than cubes, right?
well, I mean, if we can make those cubes look better, then let's do it, man.
Taking a
All
jab
right.
at Ron. Anyway, go
So,
on.
all right. So
Don't worry,
without-
Ron. You'll get to paint cubes one day.
So when it comes to this whole miniature painting thing, like I said, there's a lot of prep work. So without further ado, I kind of want to get into the
Go,
prep work
sir.
muna, because we're going to be building. We're actually going to be building a miniature. So if you could switch over to the cam
All right. Gotcha.
and the slides na rin.
Just one.
There we go. So I have here in my hand, this is a sprue. Not sure if you can see that. This is a sprue from the game Warhammer Age of Sigmar, otherwise known as Warhammer, the sequel to Warhammer Fantasy. So what I'm going to do now is one of the things that you want to use or want to get in this hobby is a pair of clippers. These are clippers. These, if you do Gundam modeling, this is should be familiar to you. Now, this particular brand of clippers is a bit pricey because this is a God hand clipper. So another alternative that I let people use, or I recommend people to use, is just regular wire strippers that you can find from like Ace Hardware or whatever. Can I name brands? I'll try my best not to name too many brands.
Like this. This is a normal wire clipper that I got from DIY store. So very same size, but
So
ang kapal niya.
So the basic premise here is that you want to cut this out of the sprue, and you want to make sure to not accidentally get all the other like the details of the miniature. So what I do is, not sure if you can see that here. I try to press it flat against that part there, snip it off. Try to do that same thing here with the foot. Snip that off, and leave this aside as well. So what I have is a single piece of that miniature right now. We have the front piece of that miniature. On the side, you're going to see that there is what we call flash. This is like the residual part ng sprue. Eventually, I'm going to be trimming that off, smoothing that off with this. This is a hobby knife / craft knife. Again, you don't need to buy the really expensive ones you find at fancy hobby stores. Literally just bought this local hardware store. Doesn't have to be expensive. The whole gamut, honestly, with this thing is if you can keep it crazy cheap but workable, that's a lot better. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut out the rest of this miniature as well. So here I'm gonna cut out the fur cloak.
I secretly use my
My
wife's
wife's
nail
nail
clippers.
Yep. There's actually a question that just came up related to those clippers. So,
Yes.
it's being asked that is there a specific advantage for that brand of clippers that you're using?
So okay, the God Hand Clipper is medyo I don't want to say legendary, but like it's kind of
Wait
famous
for it.
in the hobby community. Because other than the fact na naka-spring load siya, so it easily cuts stuff. Like you don't need to, keep going back into that one sprue and keep cutting it until okay siya. It has a very nice finish to it. So one snip trim, basically yung thing niya. Of course, there's still some cleanup, but it's not as bad. Am I missing any
Okay.
other parts?
Yeah, there are other brands also that are mid-tier. Like this one is from Vallejo. So it's built for the hobby talaga. They're blue. They're parang as effective. They're also manipis, so they can go through the sprue. And alam mo yun, there's lots of different brands like Tamiya and Vallejo that you could go a little bit lower than God Hand. God Hand kasi is, as the name sounds, God tier.
Yeah. Now, what I'm gonna do next?
Akala
I'm
ko
gonna
nga
go-
nung una, ano lang eh, it's like it's just
A terminology.
yeah, it's a brand pala.
Yeah, it's a brand. Ganon sila kapal mukha.
Wow.
They're
That's
that
amazing.
sure of their
They-
But
product.
they
They
can
are-
brag about it. Like I've cut a piece of plastic, and I think like I feel like if God was a hobbyist, ganun yung kamay niya.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
that kind
Yeah.
of doesn't bode well, man. If God was a hobbyist and his hands are literally clippers. But if I just want to shake his hand, man. Okay, so I'm just trimming off, no? If you can see that, I'm just trimming off the flash, all of the little bits that that came from the sprue, just so that para smooth siya. So it's a lot smoother when I put it on the base later on. Gonna do the same thing here sa cloak. Trim off that bit of flash there.
some board games require their figs to be assembled, but most hindi naman. They're already
Right.
assembled, I guess. But a lot of them have extra plastic that could
Yeah,
use
the
that
Flash.
yeah, the extra ones.
Right.
So you can still use those.
The one game that immediately comes to mind that requires assembly is Kingdom Death Monster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of people who have that.
That's
So-
why I mean that's a one title. I'm trying to think of another game that requires like full assembly.
A lot of the Arcadia Quest
Okay.
games, before they realized most board gamers don't have the skills to assemble. Because they've once the Starcadia Quest na, I think it's already molded miniatures.
And there's Simon, right?
Yeah. They
Of course,
have some of their games are
Arcadia
assembled.
Quest.
There you
Oh,
go.
Shadows of Brimstone. Okay, thank you. I did not know. The only version of that I played was fully assembled. So
if I were to add, no, there's a group of miniature painters who don't believe so much in cleaning the miniature, meaning tinatanggal yung mga mold line, seam line because it's too small. The reason why you want to consider doing this is you have to ask yourself at this point, ano bang gusto ko in my paint job? Do I just want it to have color? Or do I want to make it look more believable? So, syempre, if you want to make it more believable, you clean the miniature. Kasi, imagine you're gonna have Wolverine there, tapos makikita mo yung mold line sa mukha niya. So, you wanna clean it. Diba? But if you're just trying to look special, it's not necessary to have like it super clean. Kasi I understand that takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I don't even think my OCD could handle it. Like, why does this man have an extra flap?
Oh, but may parang plastic dito na
Right.
Yep.
So that is it with the with the trimming, with the cutting, with everything. No? So I basically what I did was yun nga, the most that I could with this miniature, trimmed off as much mold lines as I could. Actually, meron pa ng konti. There's a like someone said, there's an OC-ness to it. And I kind of am that person whenever I see mold lines. I'm like, ay, mold line yan. I know you covered it with paint, pero kita pa rin yan. But that's just me. You don't necessarily need to go that far, obviously. It just so happens kasi na, with a lot of miniature war games, there are tournaments. And with tournaments, there are like painting contests. So like with painting contests, definitely part ng grading talaga yung trimming off yung flash.
Yeah.
So we have a question here that says, how do you fix minis that have bent parts, like the end of a spear or a sword? So there are two ways to do that, no? The first way is to use a hair dryer. So what a hair dryer does is, it heats the plastic up to the point na sobrang bendable siya. Ayun, like what Louie has there.
Wow.
When it gets to a certain temperature, it becomes very bendy, and when it's bendy, that's when you get to basically fiddle around with it, para to strengthen
set it right that way.
To set it right that way. Same principle, yung hot water. You can dip it in hot water. When it gets to a certain temperature, if it gets bendy, it gets very soft, and that's when you can straighten it out. Now, when you straighten it out, you want to make sure na hawak mo talaga. Like, don't let it droop. Don't let it,
because it'll bend back.
It'll bend back.
Yeah.
So you want to hold it. But
You
don't
want
worry,
it
you're
to
not
harden in the shape that you want it.
Yeah. Don't worry though, you're not gonna hold it for like an hour. You're just gonna hold it for like a couple of minutes, and then there.
Ay, alam pala ng mga commenters natin eh.
Yep.
Secret.
I have
nagpe-paint din eh.
Yeah. I've done the hot water technique.
Kasama rin sa Pilipintados.
Putting the mini in hot water for a few minutes will make it malleable. Because I had a miniature that was like leaning forward to the point that it wasn't balanced anymore.
It's like Michael Jackson, right? When he's doing
it was just like almost an impossible lean. So yeah, I left it in hot water for a few minutes. It became malleable enough that I could reposition it, and I actually immediately put it in ice cold water.
Yeah, I have a fear for the blow dryer, because when I was younger, the keyboard na nalagyan ng coke, and I tried to dry it using the hair dryer, and then all of the keys just got stuck. So I guess you also have to know when to stop when you're using the hair dryer. Otherwise, it'll just be a puddle of plastic.
Like you got it in the right position you wanted it, but it has a melted face.
All right, so let me just explain what I'm going to do next. No, I'm going to begin assembling now this miniature. So the one thing I highly suggest people do before they actually glue their miniatures together is to dry fit them. So what dry fitting means is you're just going to take the two parts that you want to glue and kind of like just push them against each other to see how well they fit. Or like kung tama ba yung placement mo. Because no one wants to have like a shield backwards or something. So, tama naman, flush naman to. So, I'm gonna be gluing it. The glue I'm using here is just regular, ordinary super glue. You can find this in any hardware store or kahit mga convenience store on the side.
Question about the glue. I mean, I
Yes.
have some experience with super glue, but doesn't it technically leave like a white residue?
It does, but that's why we tend to glue before painting.
Oh, okay. So you
Another
just paint. You like essentially paint over what if there's any like white stains.
yes.
You'll
Tsaka
be
ano naman
priming
mga
over it naman eh. Matatakpan
Yeah, we
naman siya.
prime over it naman eh. In the cases na we have to glue it after painting, and then the white thing forms. What I do personally is that either I wet it with some water to kind of like brush it aside, or if this is a bit advanced, I take this thing called painting medium, and then I just get some and then rub it off.
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
like very kind of advanced na. So let's
It's like
You can
rubbing
make it
compound.
gloss. Yeah, parang
Speaking
you
of
make
glue, someone's asking what's the most generic type to use for minis.
super bun, mighty bun.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, it
As
doesn't
good
melt
as it
it?
gets.
Okay.
No,
So how super
it
glue? Yeah. So how super glue and how some cyanoacrylate. That's the
Wow,
scientific term.
science. Here we go.
Yes.
I'm learning.
It's
That's the most
actually
you'll
meant.
get, man.
Notes.
Oh,
It's
crap.
actually meant to very slightly just melt the plastic. Very slightly. Para lang mag-flush siya ng konti. Now, different brands have different strengths when it comes to it. Louis mentioned kanina yung mga Tamiya epoxy
Yeah.
glues, epoxy putties. That literally melts plastic. As in, full force melts plastic para mag-flush siya together. Ayun, thank you, Louis.
Oh.
So this one is cyanoacrylic. It glues pieces together because when this dries, it becomes a crystal. So it hardens. So you'll have a plastic coated with crystal. So this is the easiest to apply, but the downside is you're adding more material into connection, if that makes more sense.
Right.
This one is more advanced. You're not adding anything to the connection. You're melting the two pieces together. But this is a bit irreversible kasi you're turning the two pieces into one. Ito, you can break, unbeknownst to most, you can break the bond of mighty bond kasi nagiging crystallize lang siya eh.
Yeah,
If
it's,
you
it's
make
just
a
something
mistake-
in between, right? It's something
Yeah,
in between
so
two.
some hobbyists, when they make a miniature, they cut extra holes inside the pieces para lang mag-fit yung glue. And then if ayaw nila yung connection, tinatapon nila sa freezer, overnight, the crystal becomes brittle, then they just snap it off and then do it again. You can't do that with this. You have to get a clipper and cut it off again. So if you're starting, cyanoacrylic is, I think, the best teacher. Plus, sobrang cool siya if it gets into your hands and fingers kasi pag nag-crystallize siya, masarap rin tanggal-tanggalin. Parang
It hurts,
Elmer's
though.
glue
It
sa
hurts,
elementary
Hello,
na
grade
level up.
school.
It hurts! So do it like a day after. So nag-dry, leave it for a day, and then like, pag mga 1 day old na yung glue, masarap siyang tanggalin. Do it on burns. It burns your skin.
Your
Someone's
point about
asking.
learning things, I
Okay.
see where we're going.
Josh
Super
is the
glue
authority.
or-
Josh is the authority.
Super glue or cement?
All right. So, if super glue or cement, it depends. Honestly, it depends on what you're trying to do. If I am just gluing together like pieces, for example, ito yung mga Chaos Warriors na ginagawa ko, I'm just gonna super glue this. I don't need to cement this. The problem kasi with cement is that it does take a lot longer than super glue. With super glue, it melts it a bit, it crystallizes, it dries, done. And that's also the reason why it's easier. It's a lot easier to separate. With cement, it melts. It takes a long time to melt, but once it dries, that's never coming off. So unless you try really hard, to the point that you're cutting it na. So ayun, it really depends. I'm never going to use cement when I'm gluing on just like modeling grass or something because I don't want the grass to melt. I'm not going to use.
And it only works on
I'm not
plastic. This doesn't work on anything else. Metal,
Yeah.
resin, it doesn't work. Plastic,
Yeah,
plastic.
and that's another thing. You can use it on metals, yung super glue. But there's a technique to that, but I don't think we'll need to go that deep into
Yeah. Basic lang
metals.
muna,
Kasi,
basic only.
Yeah,
Basic
to
only.
plastics lang tayo.
to the point about getting glue on your fingers, there is a question here that is it recommended to use latex gloves during assembly and gluing?
Um, ako, well, for
Well,
safety
as you are
reasons,
doing right now, I can see that
yes,
you don't use
I don't.
gloves.
For safety reasons, technically yes,
No, I wouldn't
but
recommend.
at the same time, not really. The hard part kasi is if you keep using gloves, you're not really feeling the mini. So like you don't get all the nuances and subtleties of yung movements mo. Like you might like if you're wearing gloves, you might think na oh the pressure that I'm putting on this, it's not too bad. Yun pala magsasnap na pala yung spear niya or something. But if you're just using your fingers, you can feel okay, this is way too hard. I'm gonna kind of like take it back a bit.
Mm.
So yun.
Ease
All right.
off.
So right now, with the Chaos Warrior assembled, I'm going to get into this thing called texturing. So what is texturing? If you can play the slides, please, kasi may
Okay.
example ako dun for texture.
The
All right,
first
yeah,
one,
so-
the first set. This one.
Yes. Scroll to around sorry, the second set then sa assembly.
All right. Give me a second.
Actually, to add, no, if ever you do get super glued on your hands, just let it
Sorry,
dry.
3 pala. 3
Don't
paint
panic,
prep.
just let it
Paint
dry,
prep.
and then water and soap lang. That's it. Baka kasi mamaya may mag-try.
Just
Just
to
for the heck of it, they're gonna try it.
sa akin kasi, whenever like there's a game na even for just cardboard components na kailangan i-assemble and then I need to glue it, I have this like mindset where I might make a mistake and then it's just permanently bad. It's gonna annoy me forever because I know this tree has been assembled the wrong way.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that you can
yeah.
actually sort of reverse things when
But no one
Yeah.
knows.
depending on the glue.
No one
Yeah,
knows.
patience is key lang. Just like if you make a mistake, just let it be for a while and Google it. Kasi the materials you're working with are easier to reverse once they've settled. Most of it.
Mhm.
Most of it.
Okay.
Most of the
Okay.
beginner
Alright.
ones.
Right.
All right. So what you see on screen right now, this is what we call texture paint. So texture paint, basically, if you look at the different bases that you see in certain miniatures, usually there's like ground, right? There's like
Yeah.
stones and whatnot. This is where texture paints come in. These are basically textured paint. It's like a gray color, but there are like small rocks in it as well. So that when you spread it around, you can go to the next picture, please. When you're spreading it around, what's going to happen is that you're creating like kind of like a what do you call this? A battlefield
You're making
around that
ground,
miniature.
basically.
You're making ground around that miniature, and of course, there are different kinds of texture as well. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be ground. Go to the next slide as well, please. Next, then, please. Okay. You're not just making ground. You can just make like cliffs and whatnot. Next slide again, please. There is samples kasi there. Ayun. So like in that one, that's Kislev
No
Horseman
texture.
that I made. The texture I made there was like a rocky ground with snow on it. Next naman, please. That one is
Wow.
sculpted base. That one I made using corkboard and epoxy to sculpt
Wow.
those patterns there. The patterns are
The
from a template,
hieroglyphics.
so I can't claim expertise in making
Koti ko na yan
hieroglyphics.
sa math ng grade 5.
That's a template na. And then I think I have one last. Ayun. The last one naman
Oh,
is
that was nice.
the crack earth. There's an actual paint called the crackle paint that actually does that for you. It automatically,
Parang
like
ganito.
as it dries, it cracks. So yun.
Wow. Stuff
So
I
I
never
think I
knew
have an
before.
example like of crackle paint with the different mixes of medium that Josh used also.
Hold on.
So he was talking about mostly Games Workshop products that are used like this, but these are the most expensive in the market. These ones are very cheap because they're a lot bigger. They're made by Vallejo and it's designed to replicate mud. So if you open it, mukha talaga siyang poops, man. Mukha siyang champorado.
Wow.
But
Oh,
when it dries, it really looks like mud. So this is a multi example. So this is the brown is the mud. This is the sculpted base, and the red is the Martian effect that
Yeah.
Games Workshop does.
Denmark, Martian soil.
Yes, exactly. So Martian soil. So normally, why Josh is
I don't
talking
like
about this
Martian soil. I like
before
wine soil.
painting, it's because you wanna have this on your figure before you paint. Kasi
Yes.
you can influence the colors afterwards. Ito kasi you're stuck with brown once you put it on after.
Mhm.
So but in board game cases, I think most of the time may kasama na siyang scenic base. 'Di ba? I mean, you
Um,
guys
No,
or
it's
actually
for
flat.
major miniatures would, but like standard troops, probably not.
oh,
yeah.
so
The,
if you
the
want to make it look
tendency
like
is,
may story
uh,
siya or may battlefield, you put something like that.
yeah.
Someone
In
was
fact,
mentioning, someone was mentioning in the comments, good luck finding a Vallejo texture. Uh, Kinda, yeah, but you can actually find it in
Deovir lang,
Deovir.
dude. Deovir
Deovir.
lang.
The
They
problem
have
is,
yeah.
kung mag-out of stock yan, good luck. Yun lang.
But they stock up really well. Like, and one bottle of this lasts you a lifetime. Literally,
Oh, that's
a
true though.
lifetime
Yeah.
talaga. So I guess in the board game sense, I painted some Rising Sun miniatures a year back. It's important then that you know you're not covering the important parts of the base. Because I know there are
correct.
markers on the base.
Right.
So if you're
Um,
Yeah, I
gonna
was
paint,
about to
yeah.
say that. And
yeah,
uh, often in board gaming, the miniatures, because they are not necessarily your pieces,
uh,
they would move around, or somebody else
yeah.
might take control of them, and then you have these sort of wrapper bases,
Rings, yes,
right? The
Yeah.
rings or something to indicate that this is now my miniature, because it
yes.
has my color.
Uh,
So, I think yun, para kailangan syempre usable pa rin siya.
Yeah,
uh,
it's actually a very interesting solution because games like Zombicide, that the player characters were colored miniatures. Everything is gray,
yes,
but the player minis were colored. When you paint over them, how do you identify which one is the red player, the yellow, or the
yes.
blue? And the solution Simon came up with were the discs that you put underneath.
Yes. Alternatively, you could also just retain the color. Like, I think in Rising Sun, puro blue yung binigay sa akin. So I literally painted over it, but I still used dominantly blue. So
Right.
even if it looks realistic, parang, oh, okay, this is the blue, guys. Even the base, I colored blue also. So I think that's one of the main differences between miniature painting and board game painting. There's more consideration rules-wise towards paint. I think when it comes to painting board games
All
and
right,
basing
sorry.
Actually,
them
I
also.
think that's the tricky part pa nga that you, because of player colors and component colors with board gaming, you can't just change the color of a mini. It still has to somehow represent that
Mm.
kasi ginagamit ng game eh. Makikita mo, for example, adrenaline, FPS, you have
Yes.
some minis, and there's a specific color for your character. And if lumayo siya, nahirapan ka nang
You
gamitin
get
yung,
confused.
oh,
Mhm.
Correct, correct.
All right, move. Let's go to Jushcam. We're moving on
Jushka,
in our
Next
painting.
step, I think we're going to be priming. Tama ba, Master Josh?
Hey,
I'm excited about this
Josh
because
disappeared.
um, with nga when you're in a condo, you don't have space to use the typical primers na spray paint or
Yeah.
so
Chemical
I'm
stuff.
actually quite surprised that you can actually prime without
Because
spray painting.
Yep.
there's
Yeah.
the
And that's actually what
primer
I'm gonna show off now.
that's
So what I
not
have
spray
here,
paint.
uh, So before I get into priming now, one thing that you want to have then as a Sir Freddy, hey, hello,
Yeah,
sir.
Sir Freddy, welcome.
Hi, Sir Freddy. How are you? Sir
So
Freddy is a
I
generous
have a separate
benefactor of
miniature
the
here, no.
Pilipintado cause.
Because the one miniature that I used for the demo takes some time to dry. So buti na lang, I'm gonna go in an art attack style. I already have another one ready for the demo.
Wow,
So
camera
Nice.
magic.
So
Heart
professional.
attack.
Yeah, I know.
So
He actually
camera
prepared
magic.
for this.
so there
Parang
are
ano,
two
parang cooking show. May
so
nakabake
there are
na.
two ways na no? So
Ah.
there are two important ways here to basically hold your miniature while you paint. Because the thing is, you don't want to hold your miniature like this when painting. I mean, you can, but you're gonna get paint on your fingers, and the more important thing is you might actually get your finger oils, like the yung oils ng skin mo, onto the miniature, and that can help,
Wow,
and that can
okay.
get paint like removed and whatnot. So one way to do it is to use this. This is a miniature holder, no? So how it works is you open it up, it's like spring loaded, and then you put your miniature on top like this. Just clamp it into place, and you can just hold the holder, and that's why this thing exists. The thing is, though, this particular one, it's a bit pricey. So it's always nice to have like more affordable alternatives.
Yes.
So an alternative to this is actually using an old pot of paint or like a
Yes.
like a medicine bottle or anything that
Or
you have
even
at
a
home.
building block.
Yeah, even all a building block. Yeah, and what you do is um, you take this very versatile, very lovely piece of poster putty, like blue tack. You can just find this in like National Bookstore or whatever.
Yeah.
You place it on top, like squeeze it down on top of the empty pot of paint, and then just
That's it.
squeeze the miniature on top of it, and you're golden.
I
That's your
use
that's
I use the soft drinks 500.
Yeah,
with-
I've
Yeah.
seen. Yeah, most people do use a
Sorry,
bottle cap.
Yeah.
No, I use
Yeah.
the whole soft drinks
Ah,
with the
The
bottle.
important
and the
thing
cap
is
and
you
the-
gotta get something you can grip. Anything
Yeah.
you can grip, you can hold that you don't use, gamitin niya na. Like that's the beauty about miniature painting also. Anything you can reuse. Well, most of it you can reuse for the hobby.
a friend of mine uses wine bottle corks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that works too.
I
right?
use wine bottle cork sometimes. Alright, so
If you're go ahead.
okay, so para we can speed things up now. So we were talking about primers, no? So there are technically three ways to prime your model. The one way that a lot of people do, myself included, is to use spray cans. The one I particularly use is Bosny. You can find this at any hardware store. With spray
Screenshot.
cans, not everyone can do it because either A, they can't spray where they live kasi bawal, or they have asthma or like breathing problems with it. So the alternative to using spray cans is to brush on yung primer mo. Oh no, it is super bright. But
Liquid
yeah,
primer.
so this is
I have it here if you want.
yes please.
Yes. Galing talaga yung Denmark pag paint.
Snacks.
Hindi.
No, he's
hero.
loading up the slide.
Yeah.
I
Stop
knew it.
giving me too much
Okay.
credit. What's wrong with you guys?
There we go. So this is primer from a brand called Armored Komodo, and I just want to give a quick shout out. No, Armored Komodo is a local paint manufacturer, a local paint brand made here by Sir Alex Allen Arevalo. Thank you so much, sir. Shout out lang to you. He graciously provided some of the paints that we're going to be using today. You can find his shop on, you can find his products in a lot of different hobby stores here in the Philippines, as well as on Shopee and other online stores. So anyway, plug
And he
aside.
gets paid.
So anyway,
Okay,
plug
guys, we'll see you.
aside.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay na.
So ayun,
He got paid. He got paid.
Plug aside, no. One other way talaga is to hand brush it. The other way is airbrushing, but I don't have an airbrush personally, so I can't really demo that. So, ano ba yung difference ng hand brush and spray can? In practice, there's not much of a difference talaga, because at the end of the day you're still going to be putting paint on it. But why prime to begin with? Primer will help paint stick to your model. If you've ever painted plastic and just applied like a coat of paint on it, you're going to notice as time goes by, or even as you're painting, paint is going to like chip off, or
Or
like it's
set
not going to
as you
cover
paint.
correctly. Primer helps with that. The reason why is because some primers, there's like I don't want to say an adhesive, but like there's like a texture to them that
There's a
helps
rough
the paint
texture.
kind of stick onto it. And because of that, the paint is very much unlikely to chip. Lalo na later on when you do varnishing, but we'll get to that later. So ayun, if you look at the slide, that is the model that I primed just a few hours ago because I am well prepared.
Hey,
Pagdadasal rin si
same.
Josh, guys. So, may
Same,
mga
same.
lasalista
clearly
dyan.
not clearly not procrastinating.
No,
So ayun.
no. Perfect timing.
If ever you do priming outside or like with a spray can, make sure you do it in a well ventilated area. Do not inhale that stuff. That is
Mask up, mask
dangerous.
up.
Always mask up. Yeah, and well ventilated. So what I'm gonna do now is, because I am just here with at home in my room, I can prime with the brush on primer, and that's what I'm gonna do now.
All right. Question: from the
Yes.
spray to like this liquid, like
Brush
brush
on
on
primer.
primer, which do you feel like produces the more even result?
For me, it's spray. I prefer spray because with brush on primers, there's a tendency na
Smooth.
hindi magiging smooth and magiging clumpy at times yung application.
But to add also, when it comes to priming, the fear is you have a detailed model, and when you spray it on, you'll cover up or gunk up the detail. So, like, there's a little meter as you get more into the hobby. You start with primers, na spray on, because it's easy to apply, but there's less control. When you get more experienced, you'll do the brush primer kasi marunong ka na mag-control ng brush, and you can apply the layer that you want. But, most of the time, practicality's sake, it's always the brush on, the spray on kasi mabilis. You can get straight to painting. Most of us in the Pilipintados, there's a tiny cult of Bosni advocates also. So you'll see every now and then, they're gonna ask, what's the best primer to use? 10 tao, magbo-Bosni na agad. Bosni, 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 Bosni.
That's
Someone
true.
is asking if you thin it in water, the primer, before applying it
You
straight.
can
Well,
thin it in water. You can thin it in water, but as you can see, mine is getting kind of runny. So you can, but don't overdo it. Like what I'm doing right now, medyo na-over ko yung tubig, but that's fine. I can always go over when it's dry with a second coat. And that's the other problem. Brush on primers will take longer. Takes longer to dry because it's very liquid. It's very runny. It's very liquid. Unlike spray primers like Bosni, Bosni actually takes pretty quick. Like,
Uniform
give
siya.
it, yeah, honestly, give it like what, 10, 15 minutes. You're good. You're good to go.
Yep.
Technically, you're supposed to let it wait for like a day,
An
but
hour.
honestly, you don't
A
really
day.
have to. You don't really have to. Now, if you notice, I am priming it gray. Now, what is the difference between a gray primer and a black primer, and why the difference, and why should you care? Um, it basically boils down to what colors you're going to use on top of it. When you're using a black primer, for example, a dark colored primer, chances are the colors you're going to put on top are also going to be darker colors, are going to be colors that are grungier, or a bit dirtier, ganon, and not bright. The reason why is because if you use a dark primer and you try to put a light color on top of it, you're going to need several layers of that light color just for it to pop, just for it to even show up. ang mangyayari nun, you're going to be painting like what? 5, 6 coats
Yeah.
of that light color.
I
Um,
think Josh is referencing like what base coating is basically is. You'll hear Josh mention the word coverage a lot of times, and that just basically refers to how many layers should you put of the color for it to look like an even layer. Because later you'll see when you paint a miniature on the first pass, it's not going to be an even layer. It's going to be you'll see the brush strokes on one stroke. But if you do a second layer, matatakpan yung primer. So you'll see already the black is harder to cover than one layer of paint. So the primer or the undercoat sets the tone of your paint scheme
Yes.
moving forward.
That's actually a
Gray
really
is
nice
the-
graph there.
Yeah, it's behind the Cheez-Its box also. I can make one for you guys.
What?
But this is white primer, gray primer, and black primer. So you can tell the gray is like in between the hardest and easiest of most colors. So syempre white primer, mas madali si lighter colors. Tapos si black primer, mas madali si darker colors. So there's, that little toss-up. Gray is a nice place to start with for everyone. Primer gray, Bosny. All the way. Buy 10 cans, 1,000 pesos yun. Good
like
for life
honestly,
na, bro.
if you can find someone selling Bosny for really cheap, go Bosny.
But Josh has a box of Bosny.
I have, yeah, I bought
He
a
just
box of
texted me one
Bosny.
day, sabi niya, dude, I just bought a box of Bosny. What the heck?
Like
So, meron
Meron,
lang
literally,
goods na siya.
May mga case.
I bought a box of 24 cans, and
Okay,
that was
case
2
can.
Wow, it's
years
like a
ago,
case.
and I'm still using it.
Oh, tinan mo?
Wow,
Magkano
at least
yan, Josh? Magkano yung 2
it
cans?
has served you well.
That box was 2,000 pesos.
I just remembered that Denmark was also telling us before we went on stream. The places to go for these hardware stores and hobby
Yep.
shops. The hobby shops, neutral grounds, go to Vera Mall. If you see a Gundam kit, you're probably in the vicinity of a hobby shop, and then look around. So if you see a model kit, there's probably hobby materials there. And then if there's a hobby material of it, there's an alternative of it in the hobby store, in the hardware store. So there's those options. Vera Mall is a go-to place to go shopping for these.
Indeed.
On now COVID times, Neutral Grounds has an online store, NG Spiel. I'll try to link it later, but you confirm your order within the morning, you'll get it in like the same day, like in the afternoon. And then Shopee. Everything's in Shopee. So most of these things we're talking about, even the Vallejo and Arcom, man, and the models themselves, Shopeeable. So I think nowadays it's easier. If you join Pilipintados, we have a cheat sheet of all the hobby stores that we know of.
Oh,
And
we
then
should
you
have
could,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone should just join Pilipintados. And, yun lang talaga yun.
All right.
That's a
So,
good pitch.
Hey, we're
I've
joining.
I've changed up the model now. So we're gonna let that one dry, the one with the brush primer. And I have here one that I already spray primed, I think yesterday. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to get to actual painting. Yay!
Yeah.
So let's see how.
You want me to show this?
Yes, please. Ayun. So, like I said before, thank you so much again to Sir Alan of Armored Komodo for sponsoring some of the paints here. This is the paint that I'm going to be using for this particular Chaos Warrior. So it's going to be predominantly red, and then we got some colors for leathers, for some metallics for the weapons, all that, gray for the ground and whatever. So I bet you're asking, I want to get started with this, but what colors do I buy?
Hey, someone asked that first.
Yeah,
off.
that was
Oh,
one of
wow.
the intro questions, right?
Jake
Okay.
asked that. What is the first basic set of
Wow.
colors that you need?
Okay.
Grabe. Tapos di natin pinansin. Grabe. After 1 hour, di pinansin.
No, we're saving it for the painting section.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Very
Okay.
good.
So with Armored Komodo, they don't really have a paint set as of now. But what I can give you instead is a recommendation of what colors to get, no? Now, if you are painting, sabihin natin fantasy miniatures, kasi let's talk board games, no? If you're talking fantasy miniatures, you want to get different shades of brown. Now, why brown? Because so many different characters will have different shades of leather. So you're gonna want like a dark brown, a light brown, a faded kind of brown, a reddish
Brown,
brown like
brown.
that, a brown brown,
Mud brown,
a
poops
mud brown,
brown,
skull
chalk
brown, ganon.
wood brown, yeah.
And then from there, obviously, you want to get your whites and your blacks. Now, why is white and black important? If you can't find a certain color, or if you want to highlight or shade something, you can just add a white, you can add a black, and you don't need to spend any more money to get, just a lighter shade of that one color you're already using. Other than white and black, you also want to get, sabihin natin, a skin tone, maybe two. If you want to diversify your cast, maybe give it like I
Asian
don't know,
flair.
yeah, a darker skin tone, a fair skin tone, whatever. So definitely look at that. Browns, some skin tones, and go for your there's no harm in going for your primary colors. Your blues, your reds, your green,
Your
your yellows, green pala. Green's a secondary color. Oh,
My
boy.
recommendation also, if you don't want to think too much on it, let's say you have a board game, Zombicide, and then you want to know how to paint this specific Zombicide character in that specific way, look it up on YouTube or online. There will be someone sharing their paint scheme. Then just replicate that paint. So, siyempre, some of them will use expensive paints. You can always go to Armored Komodo's Facebook, yes. And they have a photo album of all the paints existing and the translate and the corresponding paint colors. So let's say if you want a red from Vallejo, they might have a red that will match the Vallejo you're looking for. So when I started painting, I didn't want to think about, color theory, all these things. I just wanted to paint Space Marines. So I picked a Space Marine army, I picked a tutorial, I just made that my shopping list. That's the lazy, not lazy, but it's the quick start way to do it. If you need
Yes.
something specific for a board game, so to speak.
So, one other question someone might have is, what brush do I get ba? And why the different kinds of brushes? So,
Wait.
different brushes come in different sizes, and you're never always going to use every brush that you have in your collection. So, it's important to have not really a huge collection, but a good set of brushes. So, you're going to want something like this. This is a rounded tip brush. Um, this rounded tip brush is great for base coating, or for if you have a smaller version of this, you can use it for detailing and whatnot. If you go to the next slide, ayun nga, we have the parts of a brush. We have the tip, that is the business end of the brush mismo. The belly is the center of the brush. It's actually what holds the water and the paint. So the bigger the belly, the more water and paint it's going to hold. So why is that important? So that when you are painting, you don't need to keep going back to your palette. You can just keep painting as long as meron pang laman yung belly mo. You have the heel, which is the very bottom of the bristles mismo. This actually contains a bit of wax, and that wax is what holds it, is what keeps it in
It's the
place
glue.
dito sa ferrule. It's the glue, essentially. So, yeah, that's basically the parts of the brush. And different brushes will have different uses. Like ito, like I said, this is a round brush. I use this for detailing and for even base coating sometimes. Over here, I have like a brush that's a bit older. That's like a frayed tip. And
Mhm.
I get to use this for either base coating or for dry brushing, which I'll talk about later on.
Oh, dry
And
brushing.
ayun, basically that's it. Different
Yeah.
brushes will have different uses. If you go to places like National
National.
Bookstore, or I was gonna say Art Bar, but then Art Bar is also National Bookstore. They also have like sets of paint brushes that you can use. You can even use like yung artist grade brushes, like yung mga ginagamit sa canvas and whatnot, because chances are the tips of those brushes are actually small enough to use even in miniature painting.
Yeah,
But you know, it's
those are
just
what I have because I have
Yeah.
like from old ones like these are like camel hair brushes.
Yeah. If you're starting, just get a bunch of round brushes, and like there could be
yeah.
very cheap. Like in National, you can get a nice round brush with a good tip for 12 pesos. But there are basically two types of brushes: a natural hair and a synthetic. Get the synthetic if you're starting. The synthetic is not real hair. It's designed so that it bounces. So even if you flick it, it goes back into shape. If it's a natural hairbrush, when you flip the hair, it won't bounce back. It stays like this. So as a
Yeah, yeah,
painter,
just
this
like
is
mine.
more yeah.
Yeah, it works
This
well.
is more similar to the use of a pen. So you want to take it's like using a ball pen in a sense because it goes back into shape. So get a lot because you're gonna mess up a lot. You're not, and then at least you'll have an extra. And it's not mahal, mga like
Yeah.
ilang 20 pesos lang naman.
Like I can spend a longer time here talking about brush care, but honestly, when you're starting, you're gonna ruin
Yeah.
them anyway. So don't worry about it. It's a
Pebeo, just get
brush.
a bunch of Pebeo. Those are pretty the workhorse brands.
Yeah, honestly, Pebeo.
Pebeo.
The one I'm using right now is medyo mahal siya because it's kind of a pro-ish brush. This is Vincent Zuiver Kolinsky, which means
Yeah,
it's made.
baby.
Yes, it's no the Zuiver cult, but yeah, it's
That's our
made from
drugs,
weasel
man. That's
hair.
our drugs. Dude, dami namin
It's
ganyan,
made
bro.
from weasel hair, so it's a natural hairbrush.
Wow.
It works very well. Like I love this brand personally, and yeah, it's the brand I've been using as long as I've been painting this. So right now I'm doing what's called base coating. So when you're painting a miniature, what you want to do talaga is there are two ways to start. One is you paint the main color first. Like whatever the main color is going to be for the miniature, paint that first. That's what I'm doing here. I'm painting since the Chaos Warrior is going to be red, I'm going to be painting the entire thing red at first. I'm not gonna worry if it hits the other parts that I don't want to be red. Like example, if you can see here, I'm like purposefully hitting the boots. I don't care. The reason why is because later on I'm going to cover that up anyway. So it doesn't matter if I hit it or not because it'll be covered up with another color. The other way to start painting is to, and this is important if you are painting a miniature with a lot of cloth, is to paint as if you're dressing up. So you paint yung skin muna because that's what we have at first, yung flesh, yung skin.
Yeah.
And then from there, you start working on like the inner cloak, the inner shirt, and then work on the cloak of that character, like whatever jacket or thing that person is wearing, and then move on to the accessories, like whatever the person is wearing, like a necklace or something that's on top of the cloth mismo. And last, of course, will be the weapons or whatever that person is holding.
Josh, if I
Um,
may, sorry to interrupt,
yes.
but I think what we skipped a little bit is basically loading your brush. So
Yes.
this is my palette. This is the water that I have. Normally, I have two waters with me, two receptacles of water. But to start with, just have one. Your brush should be damp before you even put paint. Then you get your paint bottle and you shake it. That's because when acrylic is sitting in the stores for the long time, the pigment and the material itself separate. So you just want to shake it. Because when you don't, you'll pour it, you don't get paint, you get different chemicals on your palette. So just put very little. Remember, you're painting a tiny, tiny figure. Just put very little. I'm notoriously known for over putting too many paint, so this is quite difficult for me. So put very, very little. This is actually a lot for some of my friends already. Now, when this is basically where you get paint from, and then this is your brush. This is the maximum thickness your paint will ever get, and you want to thin that. So this is no water at all. I'll just pull the paint, and you can see it's that thick. If I add more water, just a touch, and then I put water to the side, makikita mo that, I don't know if that's kita, but when I spread it, the paint actually goes back into itself. That means that's a little bit watered down. So you want a paint that's in between thick and something that pulls back. That's like what we call the milky consistency. You won't, it's hard to get this agad, but over time you'll get what I mean. When you pull the paint, it doesn't go back onto its trail. It just pulls thinly, and then you'll have thin layers as you go on. So that's what Josh is doing right now. He's
Yes,
putting paint on his palette, getting a damp brush, and then from the palette, he pulls paint with a wet brush and then starts applying it on the miniature. So I think Josh's first technique of painting the big spots first is bang on. Because like you really won't have a lot of mistakes when you paint the bigger pieces first. Then
So
you have
this-
training to move to the smaller pieces.
So this one that I've done while Louis was talking. Actually, Louis, can you please do more of the talking?
Okay,
Focus on the
sige,
details of
good.
painting eh.
So,
So
sige.
what I did first kasi is the initial base coat ng miniature. This is yun nga, applying the main color of the miniature. Now, because I painted this with thin down paint, you're going to notice now when this dries. I think I have a slide for that actually. When this
Incoming.
dries, when this dries, it's actually you're going to see, you're going to see that there's still primer underneath. You can still see the black primer underneath. And the reason why is because the paint application is still thin. Now, why do you want the paint to be thin? Because if you go on too thick, you're going to be clogging up the detail, and you don't want that. Lalo na kung you have a very pristine looking face on your miniature, and then you slap on a thick coat of paint. Mukha siyang naka-botox. So, you're gonna want to thin your paint. And like Louis said,
Go ahead.
yeah.
I have a good tip for figuring out if your paint is too thin.
Yes.
So
please.
if hindi kayo OC, use your thumb. Your thumb is like plastic without primer. So I'm gonna apply paint that's with the right mixture of water, and you'll basically get to see how it looks. Tama na, hindi ko nakita yung thumb ko. Ayan. So that's a good coverage. This is a good coverage because when I apply it, it applies straight. Watered down paint looks like this. When I apply it, it pulls back on. Syempre, sobra yan. When I apply it, it pulls back on itself. Syempre, when I'm demoing, hindi nagtutugma. It pulls back on itself. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's not a straight square or not straight shape. The water goes back to where I started, as opposed to a paint with good consistency. The paint doesn't go back. Kita ba sa camera? Parang hindi, no?
Yeah.
Kita naman kita.
Somehow. Yeah.
So
Well,
just imagine.
it shows yung because I was watching din yung video ni Josh on this and he was talking about that milky
Yes.
consistency.
Yeah.
And yun nga, parang hindi condensed milk. Syempre.
Just imagine that you're painting with water. And di ba when you put water on, pag nasa dining table tayo, may plastic yung dining table paminsan, di ba?
Right.
And then when you put water on it, the water goes into blobs.
Yeah.
That's how water behaves. When you put paint in that, the blob becomes flatter and it becomes more controllable. That's sort of the mindset. The more water you have, the water tension, tama si Jake Fernandez, mas malaki yung water tension, making it harder to control. So when you put paint with water on a surface, the water tension pulls it back and it doesn't behave the way you want to. So when you were saying, Ron, at the start, when you wanted to paint that armor plate, probably watered down masyado si paint so that when you put it, you were just basically wetting your miniature.
Right.
You weren't putting paint. So, experiment.
With the milk, parang I think the term spilled milk kasi nga when milk just flows outwards, di ba? Hindi siya parang katulad ng tubig na it kind of clumps, or if it's like the thick ones where it just stays. So yun, I think it just coats it.
Nagpo-pool siya in water. So the way that Josh is base coating right now, that's actually thin. But when Josh paints a line, lumalabas yung line, hindi lang siya solid line. That's good coverage. Kasi he'll go back to that when it's dry, then magiging solid yung water.
So case in point, like dun sa slide ko, you're going to see primer. I'm not sure if you can see it now, pero you can still see spots of primer dito sa red shield niya. But that's okay because later on I'm going to go over it. Anyway, you can see in the slide, that's what it looks like kapag solid na yung color. That's
Two
what happens.
coats, at least.
2 coats, yes, at least 2 thin coats of paint. So after you paint the first layer, and then there's some splotches here and there, wait for that to fully dry, and then go over it again, and you're going to get that result. Na, it's more solid. You're not going to see a lot of primer or any primer at all underneath, and you've basically got solid coverage. Now, what do you do when you're waiting for for that first coat to dry? What I do
Play
is I
board
paint
games.
different part. Play board games. But
Forget
if
about
you're,
the painting.
if you're on a deadline, yun nga, you might want to paint other parts of the mini, which is what I did. While waiting for this red to dry, I started painting yung cloak niya, which I painted in Arcom German Gray. Now, going back to the red, it's still a bit wet, so I'm going to move on to paint the different leather parts naman. So for leather, I'm going to be using Arcom Burnt Umber. Oh, and make sure when you're piping, make sure to shake your bottle so that pag the medium and the pigment don't separate.
It's this one, right?
No, that's the one before that.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
Another
there we go.
technique that you can try is they call it batch painting, army painting, factory, painting. Basically, especially for yung mga may ink dyan, may 1,000 minis, you get all the minis laid out, you paint all the blues. So that while the blue on the first mini is drying, you're painting the blue on the second mini, on the third mini, the fifth mini. When you're in the 10th mini, dry na si mini number 1, then you can switch to a different color and paint that or go on a second base coat. So I batch paint. Batch paint basically tawag doon. You can do that one.
Mm-hmm. So that one actually works a lot faster, especially if you're not overly concerned with the details of miniatures. Which is why normally I'm not a speed painter kasi I'm usually very OC about this kind of stuff. But since we're speed painting here, okay lang sa akin.
Jake had a nice question. How do you know if the paint is wet? I think the tell is just dilaan mo and then masisira. Kasi ito naman you can tell if it's wet, not to retain the But
No, I think
put light
if it's
on
a
it.
little bit shiny, tama ba?
Yes, correct.
Yes, if it's shiny, then yes, it's still wet. The good thing about it
Congratulations,
Arcom,
I learned something.
the good thing about it Arcom and other brands of paint as well, like Citadel, like Vallejo, they actually don't take that much long to dry. Like the only times that will take a very long time to dry is if we get into things called wash paints. But like I said, deal with that later. Like the more liquid it is, it might take longer, but it depends then on the temperature where you're in right now. Like
Are
now
there
that it's-
particular painting jobs that you guys can think of where you actually want it watered down?
Yes.
Yes.
We call that washing or glazing. So sometimes that red of the armor of Josh is just plain flat red. But if I want more paint to be in like the kilikile, the sulok-sulok, I'd overwater down maybe a dark red or even a black so that because it's water, it slides off the top and falls into the crevices and it dries there. So that's like the scientific way to describe the wash. You actually want it to be the reverse of a base coat. You want it to slide into the miniature. So you can overwater a miniature on top of a base coat and then papatuyuin mo siya sa loob ng mga kilikili and whatnot. That's a nice...
crevices.
The crevices. The nooks and crannies, sabi nga ni Neil Buchanan.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's when I asked the question, I thought that it wouldn't have been something you typically want to do, but that's very interesting.
a lot of painters actually do that. But the most companies, they make a wash, which is pre-thinned paint. So it's the same amount of paint, but there's more medium. So it's designed to flow more than the usual paint. So ito normally you don't water down kasi sobrang water down na siya. Then you put it on the miniature. I think that's the next step that Josh would do.
Yes.
Magandang segue question yan.
Once all the base coats are done, I'm gonna move into shading. So I'm gonna double my base here.
Ah.
So this
So
is
ano,
good practice. This is good practice naman with speed painting. Eh. Like if Milo was here, like he nails
He'd be
speed
proud.
painting really well.
The other reason why you would want to overwater painting is a bit more for professional painters. Kung medyo seryoso ka sa painting, imagine you have a flat surface and then this one is painted gray and you only want a gradient to happen. You'd overwater that down. So that's a bit more difficult to do. Even I haven't mastered that, but overwatering is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not
Uy,
something
di
you
ah.
have.
Uy, anong you have it dabbled? Uy, you've dabbled in it, ha?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say I'm
Nag-NMM
great
ka.
at it.
Nag-NMM ka na before.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm the best at that, by the way. but it's not something you would do when you're starting, especially pag board games. You wanna get nice minis on the table para you can play right away. So I think that's also why Milo probably does speed painting because he has a lot of miniatures when he makes one purchase lang. Tsaka, he paints really fast. You'll see him post a lot in the Facebook group when you join. I think, what are you painting now, Milo? Rage? I think you're painting, actually I don't know what Milo's painting now. What's he painting? Iba-iba eh.
Oo nga eh. So yun, right now I'm moving on to the fur cloak. With the fur cloak, I'm going with Armored Komodo Dark Sea Gray. And with this kasi, I didn't really have a color scheme in mind. Basically, I Google searched Khorne Chaos Warrior, and then I took elements from all the pictures I saw. Kasi in Warhammer, Khorne, yung associated color niya talaga is red. So I'm like,
Ayun.
hey, what goes nice with red? Uy, baka gray. Uy, baka like an off-white for the cloak. Uy, that's gonna look nice. Basically, what that's called is color theory. Now, ang color theory, it's kind of a college level thing to talk about. So I'm not gonna get into it that much. But it's basically picking out really nice like color combinations for your models. Like it pays to know a bit of color theory when you're doing this sort of stuff. Para lang hindi mo kang garish yung colors nyo.
Yeah,
But like
I
said,
can see that.
Can you-
Planning it out would be very good. I mean, so at least you're focused on how you really want it to look like.
Yeah, there's less going on in your brain. And I think that's why I like board games also. Kasi I think there's more artwork in most board games than some miniature painting, miniature war games that we have. Kasi if cover pala ng box, you know how to paint the miniature. You know what colors to buy, you know the effect you want to get. That helps. That helps a lot.
And not to mention with wargaming, usually kapag may miniatures, there are already professional people who are painting them. Diba? So you already know what to base your color scheme off. Like example, Warhammer. You already know how an ultramarine looks like. You already know how a Stormcast Eternal looks like. Just look at the website, look at the box, look at the vlogs. But with board game miniatures, chances are you're not going to find a lot of miniature painters for them. Like off the bat, lalo na sa box art.
Right.
So being able to create your own color scheme, I think it's really great, really wonderful na you're kind of like flexing the muscles of your brain or something like that to achieve.
Sidebar lang, no? If you plan to get into Warhammer and you want to get into Ultramarines, Josh is the best person to ask. He's actually the best
I cannot
Ultramarine
swear.
painter.
I cannot
As in,
swear
he
in this
loves
chat.
painting. He loves
Shut
painting.
the hell up. Shut the hell up,
He's such a
Louis.
good boy. He
Shut
likes
the
playing
hell
the
up.
good guys.
Oh,
follows the
shut
rules.
up.
Very vanilla.
Shut up.
That's Josh.
Shut up, Louis. You are dishonoring. You are dishonoring your heritage, my friend. So that's a little.
He's getting in your head. He's trying to slow you down.
Sorry, that's
Alright.
a little.
Resist.
So I'm
No.
sorry, everyone watching.
May
That's a
factions
little.
kasi ang ano,
Yeah.
di ba?
Yeah.
So you have
That's a little. Yeah, the factions say in Warhammer. Ultramarines are like the most basic of the Space Marines. They're like super vanilla. Ganon.
We're the ones that
I
fund
do
the
not.
hobby.
I
fund
do
the
not
hobby.
play Ultra. I'm
Everyone
sorry for
plays
the record.
Marines. So everyone buys it.
Louis De
The company
Leon.
makes more money.
Louis De
So you can
Leon.
have your ugly miniatures. Kami talaga yung bida dito, pare. Enjoy mo na yung hobby mo, yung workshop mo dyan. This is yours. This is you be you.
Louis Jose De Leon. Louis plays Ultramarines. I play Eldar and Nurgle. I used to play
being a
Nurgle.
good
I don't
guy.
play Nurgle anymore.
I'm a very
I got to
good
play
baby.
Warhammer, but not the miniatures. I played the LCG, so I'm also familiar with the factions and
Right.
the whole. This I actually really dove deep into the lore and just fell in love with the whole.
Oh, nice.
Wait, so you made your
Nice.
own god by like engineering
Yeah, dude.
an exorcism event and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
the
dude.
whole idea of the chronicle of time for like what is canon is
Sobrang
sort of
sabog na, dude.
yeah, because you're receiving the events
The
of what's
information
happening
like light years ahead,
Yeah.
light years behind.
in a different world. It's a pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Although I also played Eldar actually when I did the LCG.
Okay.
Hey, Eldar.
I am a
Just-
big
they
fan
just look
of
so-
I'm a big fan of the chaos, like the demons. Those
Hey!
pigs are
Parang
awesome.
hindi pala ako dapat nandito.
Oo nga eh.
pero ano,
Imperial
it's true
scum.
that- well, I played the RTS also. Did you guys get to the Dawn of War?
Dawn of War, bro.
Oh, yeah.
That like
Ah.
got everyone into Warhammer.
Oh my goodness. Although the whole sino yung para frontliners ng
You must
Space
be sorry.
Marines?
Yung Imperial Guard, man.
Imperial Guard. Oh, they are so annoying. They are so annoying. Like, why is this an army? I don't understand. This doesn't work. Everybody are in mech suits and in full armor. And like, you guys can't
Balls.
help.
That's their weapon.
Just-
Balls. Man.
Run,
Balls.
run.
Yes.
By making those comments, you have just angered like a good
I know,
chunk
I know.
of the
I know.
Warhammer Philippines.
I just
Yeah,
lost the
there's
whole
there's no turning back.
There's no telling back,
10%.
man.
10%.
You don't diss the guard.
No.
There's a meme of that army having a sub faction that make trenches. So lagi silang may shovel. And they're the
But
bravest. Kasi
I
they
do
charge
agree.
in with
I do
horse.
agree that they make the coolest generals though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like sobrang angas yung generals. It's just that like everybody else. It's like how does this work?
The modern day man versus
Yeah.
the
But maybe hindi lang na-represent na maayos.
Run
ng
the heritage.
Dawn of
ng
War.
game.
That's what they say.
Yes.
My foray with Warhammer was fantasy. That's why
Oh,
I'm not familiar with
swabe.
40k. So Wood
But fantasy is really nice. The models are
Bretonia,
good.
the Skinks,
Yes.
those guys.
Yes.
The High Elves.
Aside from Warhammer, is there any other miniature games that come to mind that you'd recommend board
Yes.
gamers like take a look at?
Blood
Wala na.
Bowl!
Yun lang.
So
Sold.
one very good game that I really recommend is this game called Star Wars X-Wing.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's a good one.
With
Pre-painted.
Star Wars, yeah,
But
it's all
it's
pre-painted,
pre-painted,
so you
though.
don't necessarily need to paint unless you want to do like custom vehicles. If you kind of want to, make a custom design on a Millennium Falcon, you can do that. But the thing that's nice about Star Wars X-Wing is that it's a miniatures game that's already pre-painted, and it teaches board gamers the idea of a war game without getting too deep into the craft side. I mean, there's still a craft side, but it's very diminished and kind of optional.
I love the whole idea of yung Where you program in X-wing yung movements ng ano.
Yeah. And
So
you bluff,
that's
parang
pretty-
you make them think you're going left, but you're going right. That's a nice.
And the whole idea
have
of-
you guys played the larger scale version of that, Armada?
Armada.
I
I have
wanted
not.
to. I've wanted to. Kasi ang laki ng ship, bro. Like,
Or how about the Cross franchise, Attack Wing?
I
I like-
X-Wing, yung ano, Star Trek.
Yeah.
Hindi ako ma-Star Trek eh.
Okay.
Well, it also has D&D.
yeah,
Attack
it has Attack Wing there.
Yeah.
The dragons
the
look
dragons,
nice.
Mhm.
the fantasy one.
I like the design and the look of the D&D version, and I'm not trying to throw shade here at Star Trek, because I might anger people. But the problem is it doesn't really work with Star Trek, in my opinion. Because you have big, huge capital ships that are doing all these fancy maneuvers that they don't really do.
Diba?
You know, it's more like an
bro.
X-Wing. It's
Star
more like
Trek?
it's more like a
Ang hirap,
dogfight thing that you'd see X-Wings and TIE fighters do.
Well,
Meron pa.
my standpoint to that is that technically Star Trek was supposed to be non-confrontational. They're just
Yeah.
supposed to be observing. So having a combat game for them is a little strange. But
Kinda
every
weird,
time I
yeah.
walk into neutral and I see that board cube on display, I want to try it out.
Yeah, if you're going in, if you're a Star Trek fan and you want to experience like a really good
Ascendancy.
board game, yes, there you go. I think my recommendation there would be Ascendancy, because you really feel you're the Federation and you're exploring planets, and you actually don't have to encounter the alien races or the other opponents right away. You can sort of hide yourself as long as you want if you just really would just want to discover. Pero yun, as soon as you have that first encounter, it sort of locks your civilizations in place, and now you have this big epic war that you have to go through.
Maybe we can throw something at them that they could play. Chaos in the Old World.
GKR.
Yeah, that one
Yeah.
for Warhammer. Diba? That's where it Eric Lang started. I think that
Yeah,
what-
dude,
Yeah,
Chaos
that's-
in the Old
Although out
World
of print,
is
though.
awesome. Yeah. But
Yeah.
when you guys see the board, it's made to look like it's made of skin.
Human
Oh,
skin.
snap. Sorry,
So it looks like it looks hyper violent that you just want to play it.
What's it called?
Chaos,
Chaos
in the Old
in
World.
the old world.
Okay.
I got one of my and I think I mentioned this in our chat last night, our pre-show chat last night. But one of my favorite games ever, because it gives the sense of both gaming, like war gaming, sort of war gaming, but also territory control and diplomacy and whatnot. Is Twilight Imperium 4. Like, I love that game to death.
But it takes a whole day
all
to
four
play.
It took
copies
the
of
whole
your
day,
play
though.
group.
Yes. Yes. All copies of my playgroup. I did note nga na a lot of my friends have it. I had it, but we only ever used our one friend's copy. So ayun.
When we
When
were
I-
doing conventions before COVID, because we usually host conventions, it's called Bacon.
Nice.
There will always be a group of people who will be playing TI for the whole
Yeah,
day.
they'll
that's true.
they'll give us a heads up na. Oh, Ron will need tables for
Four
four.
tables,
And
8
then-
chairs.
Yeah, so nagsimula yon isang group lang yung naglalaro. Pero recent Bacon, dalawang set na sila.
Yeah.
And so they're basically doing 2 pods, and then they were
that's
able to
what they're
do
gonna play.
2 days.
Yeah, another group even challenged them, the Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
Yeah.
Like they clocked like 5-6 hours on that table. It was
Yeah.
wild.
So
They
naawa
forget
na
to
kami dun
eat.
sa naglalaro. Kaya dala na namin sila ng pagkain. Guys, kain kayo.
Hopefully, when everything resumes back to normal, you guys can hang out with us in one of
Yeah,
our
dude. I'd be
conventions.
Yeah.
down to join that group.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Hey, man.
I would be just asking you guys, can you guys make a painting section?
Yeah,
As
I
we
was
do
gonna say
the-
we could have a painting in a wargaming section.
It's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
yours. This
Hey,
Yeah.
man. Hey man,
Paul, that's
Absolutely,
all
man.
yours.
hey man, if I'm trying to build my territories and get to Mechatol Rex, and you're going to tell me to eat, I'm gonna try to get Mechatol Rex and control my territory.
Food is for winners. I will eat when I win.
Food,
Yes.
magkano yan? How much resources do I need for that?
Ilang action points ba yan?
But
My
going back to the
gosh.
question, the actually Warhammer is actually a good answer kasi I just realized late they make a lot of gateway board games into tabletop war
Yeah.
games. So if you buy any of their board games that exist, the miniatures can be eventually transported to your tabletop board army.
Yeah.
So if you
But-
play the board
I think
game,
Milo
eventually,
mentioned Necromunda.
yeah, yes. Well,
Necromunda.
Necromunda is a different scale, but someone mentioned Cursed City,
Right, right.
your adventurers,
You're for-
but if you want to
Forgetting
collect,
something, no? Forgotten Stars.
Forbidden
Oh,
Stars.
ano?
Forbidden
the-
Stars.
Forbidden
Stars.
Stars. Yeah,
The
Forbidden
problem
Stars.
kasi with Warhammer crossing over into board games, usually nawawala yung license nila or they run into some
That
trouble.
was
Kaya,
back in the day that they were
before they
partnering with
became the Empire.
the Empire. When they were able to establish already, we good, guys. We good.
That's
No
why if
more-
you read the rule book, sobrang weird yung spelling ng mga stuff nila.
Because of
I
all of
have
the-
another like little follow up question. So you did mention a while ago that you'd recommend something like Attack Wing, that it's already pre-painted, and
Yes.
so that you can get an idea already of how everything works. But
Yes.
I guess it's more of what are your opinion on games that do have minis already painted, like it takes away the experience for players getting to customize or paint something themselves.
Well-
Like, what are your thoughts on those kinds of board games?
Well, I mean, ako, if I'm after just okay, ganito. When I play a game, I'm after both aesthetics and of course gameplay. If gameplay is more important to me, then I'm not really gonna care about how the components look. I mean, sure, it's gonna be nice if they look nice, if they look well produced. But if I'm after a game, then I'm going to look for a game. On the flip side, if it's a game and it has miniatures that I want to look nice, then I'm going to spend time on both. But knowing me, I'm going to spend more time on the aesthetics, on the actual miniatures.
Okay, because actually, you know what? There are some games like I think it's Forgotten Realms. They make several board games that they do offer the minis of their board games sun dropped or like pre-primered. So
Okay.
that like they still give you the
Babawasan lang yung
option.
step.
Yeah, that you can still paint it yourself. While there are other games like GKR, Giant Killer Robots, that there were versions of the game totally unpainted, and then versions
Yeah.
of it that are fully, completely painted.
Yes. Yes.
Did you guys
For the,
get to watch
For
The-
that,
the-
honest,
yung Kinect Bash ni
Adam Savage.
Adam Savage na GKR?
Yeah, that's really good. And he used Tamiya paint, which is a
Yes.
paint that you use in a
Well, yeah, he used a
it
lot of like
as a wash
techniques and
also. Yes. So doon makikita mo sa video na yan, he overwatered some Tamiya paints para lang mag-wash siya, mag-wash
Right.
siya.
right, and then the weathering techniques and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think to answer the question also, it's like everything. When you get into a hobby, you have to know what you're getting it into for. So in Pilipintados, you see a mix. People want to play, so they paint faster. People want to collect, so they paint a certain way, which is where I fall into. Or people just like to display a figure on their shelf.
shout
So they
out to
spend their
the
time
Black
painting.
Cloth Gang.
To the Black Cloth Gang.
Black
the,
Cloth Gang.
the cultiest cult in Pilipintados. If you know, you know. BCG, bro.
Okay.
Sorry. We have this small chat group, not small, but like we have this chat group within Pilipintados na puro expert level display painters that put
Wow.
my skills to shame, and I'm like, how to
Kasi
be you?
pare, kung
and
may
the wor-
sinabi
the
kang
worst
black
part-
cloth para sa photography, part ka na ng group. Kasi
Right,
pwede
right.
kong picture yung mini mo sa may black background.
And the thing is, with this group, we have this one member who is a lot younger than us. Shout out to my boy Kian Morales. Um, he's like what? I think
Hello.
19. He is an amazing figure painter, bust painter. That guy's
So he
been
got
featured
into
on
the hobby to paint talaga. Not to play, but to paint. And he's globally...
Mas
featured in
mas
global
traditional
places.
yung techniques nila or
Yeah,
approach na into
very
painting,
traditional.
no?
May
Kasi
2D background talaga.
Kumbaga, they're coming from, like somebody who paints actual paintings on a 2D surface, just sort of transferred on a 3D plane where
Yeah.
you now have more sources of light rather than
But
sort of just
you'd be-
one.
You'd be surprised nga some people, they make it an art form to make a miniature look flat. They make it look like you're looking at a Renaissance painting. So it's crazy.
Wow, that's true.
There's that world. That's where Kian sort of goes. But to answer Javi's question, my opinion on pre-painted, I'm okay with it because I understand there's a lot of people that get into our hobby. When I say our hobby, playing with tiny toys for different reasons. So some people like to play with tiny toys na wala silang pakialam sa painting. Board gamers yan. Some people like to play with tiny toys but don't have the patience to paint it. Maybe they like the pre-painted. And then there's people in between in different mixes. So my stance on those things is very neutral about it. I would buy a game that's pre-painted kasi God knows I have too many unpainted miniatures. But
Kung meron kaming
every painter's
shelf
problem.
of shame, I think meron kayong
Figs of
boxes
shame. Figs of shame
good.
sila.
Oh,
pile of games.
you have no idea, man. My friends that are in Warhammer, that when I visit
I'm
their
sure.
homes,
Parang
they have
neutral ground yung bahay
boxes of uncompleted projects everywhere.
Dude, literally right next to me. Like my shelf
Yeah.
is literally right next to me.
There's
Let's not look at that.
there's a cultural cult, no, besides miniature painting, scale modelers and gunpla modelers. Parang mas prolific ang distribution and pricing of those kits. So those really they have houses of shame. Pag ganun,
Oh,
We have
that's
one in
bad.
our group,
House
Alvin.
of shame.
Alvin collects Gunpla models.
so I'm sure
I don't know
marami
if
siyang
he,
gunpla.
I don't know if he paints it, but he likes building it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually have I used to work with a couple of people that would buy like duplicates and triplicates of their Gundams just to keep those sealed, and they actually
Wow.
appreciated in price, which is impressive.
Wow, I didn't know that. Baka you should, wait, can we get to washing? Josh, I just realized. We should get to washing or shading our miniatures.
Yes, wala, I still like the metallics lang.
I can show a few pictures if you want.
Yes, please. You can show the metallics na rin para makita ng tao.
Is it this one?
And a painting quiz for
Back
Denmark.
back pa.
Back
Merong
pa,
mga,
back pa.
yes, back pa ng konti. Meron doon, I'm using gunmetal and brass. These are the ones that Armored Komodo provided.
There,
for me.
gunmetal. There you go. And
There we go, yung mga
Sorry.
brass na yun. So, with metallic paints, there is a key, a very important thing to note when you're working with metallic paints. Metallic paints are called that way because they kind of have like metal bits in them. Well, not really metal, but like sparkly
Glitter.
looking bits in them. I don't want to say glitter, but
Yeah, don't say glitter. That
yes.
takes away from the experience.
Magical shine.
Magical. Pero that particle actually stains. Like it stains other paint colors. So when you're working with metallic paints, when you're done, you need to clean your water. You need to change your
Or
water.
have a separate water for just metal.
Yeah, or have a separate water pot for them because yun nga, it's very easy to contaminate your other paints. And you don't want sparkly looking flesh unless you want sparkly looking flesh.
So,
Vampires.
for reference, this is my dirty water. This is an old lalagyan ng Q-tip. And then this is a lalagyan of pickles, which is my metallic water. And then this is just clean water for cleaning the brush.
Why don't
So
you
Actually, I
just
have
get
a
new
question.
water?
reference.
Why don't you
I
just
have a
get new
question with-
water?
Yeah, so I have a question with the water.
This is really good with rice, by the way. If you have this, really good with rice. Anyway, with the water.
So,
Water.
hindi, hindi ba na yung dumi ng tubig, doesn't it affect the color pigment?
It does.
It
So,
does.
when it gets like this, palitan mo na yan.
Which is it looks cement looking,
Ah.
like you can already use it as plaster.
A good rule of thumb is, for example, I'm a messy painter. So this is water, I'll put it. And I'll put it on my thumb. Actually, si malinis pa siya.
Oh, okay.
But if you see that, when I apply it and I start to see the wrinkles in my skin, that means pigment is going inside my skin. And that means by just touching the top and I'm getting pigment already, your paint is already needs to be
The
changed.
water needs
Right.
Yeah,
right.
new water.
Okay. Gotcha.
New water.
Gotcha.
So this one I just
Alright.
keep for emergencies and refilling my wet palette. But these are your two main drivers. Mix with metals. And because if you mix the metallics with here, magiging metallics lahat ng water.
Mhm.
Giglitter
Alright,
yung
so-
skin ng miniature mo and all that jazz.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do next, let me just paint the claws itong pelt thing niya dito. So what I'm gonna do next here is, I basically base coated everything now. Sans the metallic parts. I'll get to that later. But what I want to do is kind of show you guys a technique called dry brushing. So dry brushing basically, I think I have a slide for that as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out the texture nitong base niya para mag-pop siya ng konti. So what I used for the base is I used dark gray. So I'm going to use a lighter color for the dry brushing. So let me show you how to do this. I'm going to be using ivory for this. Now what I'm going to do might look a bit counterintuitive, but it actually does work. And I'll show you how. So I take a different brush naman. I'm not going to use a round brush because if I use my round brush is gonna get destroyed. I'm going to use this older frayed looking brush here, which is perfect for dry brushing. Sa palette ko, I'm going to get some of that ivory paint that I put, right? And you can see dito sa brush ko, ang dami niyang paint, right? Now this might look counterintuitive, but I'm going to wipe most of that paint off here on my towel.
Sayang!
Wipe most of it off until there's basically nothing left, almost nothing left dito sa brush ko. You can see the difference, like almost back to normal lang siya. And I think there's my light. There's a slide here para mas makita yung thing.
Yeah, I'm
If you
looking
can
for
get to
it.
it, please. Para
Maybe you can try.
there should be nakalagay dry brushing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go lightly back and forth dito sa surface ko. Like I'm not concerned about hitting any other part. I'm just going back and forth. Back and forth, back and forth. Ahead pa ng konti. Not really caring if I like how much I hit. My goal lang talaga is to hit the very tips. Hit the very tips of those gray parts.
This is good for miniatures that have like a lot of texture, a lot of raised areas. Not good for miniatures that have flat areas kasi you'll end up seeing the streaks of paint. You want complicated flesh looks and everything. Actually, you can try it on your skin, and when you dry brush your skin, you'll actually see the fingerprints. You'll see you'll see more of your skin basically kasi hina-highlight mo lang yung taas, leaving the bottom part darker.
It's like sort of highlighting all of the micro edges.
Yes.
That are the contours that are on the surface, which normally, because of it's using a single color, you don't see it anymore because the light just sort of drops on the same color space.
Correct. The reason why Josh used super little paint is because if you use a lot, that water will fall into the crevices. It defeats the purpose. So it's the complete
and it kind of becomes a coat again.
Yes, exactly, or a wash. You want it to be literally dry. Actually, some people they don't even. Actually, you're not even supposed to wet your brush. You literally get a dry brush, and you get paint agad, and then you just
It's literally supposed to be dry.
if it's wet, it's wrong,
Mhm.
basically.
So that's what I'm gonna do here. While we're waiting for everything else, I'm gonna move on not to the metallics. So like I said, after this, I'm gonna change my water because yun nga, metallic flakes. I don't want it to contaminate. With metallics as well, here's another kind of unspoken rule, but like people follow it as well. You kind of don't want to use organic brushes for metallics. The reason why is because metallic paints can actually sort of harm and degrade yung organic brushes nyo. So when I do metallic paints, I usually use synthetic brushes. Like this one is a Sakura brush. This is a white tip, and you can kind of tell because it's white. It's not. It doesn't look like it comes from an animal. Uh, and basically that's why I use synthetics for metallics because I don't want to ruin it. So here I'm going to be paint using this metallic paint to work on the axe here, and I'm just going to coat all over the metal parts with this
So
metallic
essentially,
paint.
now that you are using that water, you can't use normal colors on that anymore.
You can't go back to
Yes,
that.
after after this, I'm going to be changing the water because I don't want to
Celebrate, take a
contaminate my
shot.
other paints. I would love to, but I'm kind of painting. Like I actually have
Yeah,
with
just if you
have
drink while you paint, just make sure your paint water's on one side and your drinking container is on the other.
oh yeah
Happens, I put my paintbrush on my coffee once. I mean, it
Oh,
didn't
you
change the
yep.
taste, but hassle lang.
you can
Hey
use it
man,
as a
ako I
wash.
do. Hey man, ako I do that
If you
deliberately
drink
now.
black,
I don't care.
if you're drinking black coffee, maybe you can use it as a wash. It's a stain.
Totoo, totoo.
There is a certain paint. There's a certain paint that actually does kind of taste like burnt coffee. I'm not gonna say
Oh,
it here. These people might want to
wow.
try. So no,
Kids, do not
Why
drink
do
did I
paint.
not try
open
this
this
at home.
topic?
So yeah, I'm gonna cover all of the metallic parts here. Again,
So,
if
ganun
I
yan.
go
Base
over,
coat pa rin yan, di ba, Josh? You're still base coating,
yes,
but
this is
this
all base
time with
coating.
metallics. Yes.
Yes, technically, if you're just doing the speed painting, the most tedious talaga is going to be the base coating kasi damong ginagawa. But
Yeah.
if you're going into display level stuff and you're going to detailing, syempre that's gonna be the more tedious part of this.
Time consuming.
I
Yes, with
appreciate that our audience is still very
Yeah,
attentive
wow,
to
people
us.
rode on my joke and took it seriously. What have I done?
So,
sorry,
how
what
do you know what burnt coffee tastes like? You just need to drink from a cafeteria. You should
yes.
Yes.
have a good benchmark
Or
of what burnt
if
coffee
you're
tastes
Or
asking
like.
why,
terrible Starbucks branch. Parang ganun.
Ooh.
well, if you're asking me why I know it tastes like burnt, why a certain paint tastes like burnt coffee, I'm a curious boy. I might have put some paint into my mouth and been like, I could actually live with this. And there are times I might have been, I'm never doing this again. But yes, don't try this at home, kids. Don't eat your paint. Come on.
Actually, no, since Josh is base coating also, a good thing to consider is if you don't want to overburden yourself with too many techniques like washing and dry brushing, you can make a miniature look really, 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 really nice if you just paint all the details within the line. Actually, like the one that Denmark showed me, it looked like those are mostly base coats and hardly
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
Diba? Mostly
Just
base coats.
two
But
or three layers. That's it.
yeah, and I could see which one's the strap, nasaan nagsastop yung neck sa clothing line. So you're basically trying to communicate to the other player, this is a figurine that's color blue. So that for me is a very, very passable and good job if you can immediately tell the other player, or that's a person. not a blob
Mhm.
of blue. So
Or
base
gray.
coating is a really good skill to master. Paint within the lines, get your coverages really flat, those types of things is really
Yeah,
good.
so if nung grade school ka and you can't
Yeah.
actually keep the crayon inside the line, yan,
Uh,
medyo hanap ka na lang ng
Actually, what
magpe-paint
I
for you.
Wow, my paintbrush kind of like flew out of my
uh,
hand. Holy.
that's actually what I
Okay,
tried
well,
to do. Coloring the
yeah, paint
lines.
within the line lang, diba? Actually, you
Yeah.
only have to paint within the line on the
oh,
last
oh my
color.
god.
Kasi
Right.
on the first color naman, pwede
There it
mong
is.
takpan afterwards eh. So you just paint within the line when you're bandang dulo na. Ako am a very messy painter. I don't paint within the lines until like the very end talaga. And that's when you get all the details.
I actually like when Josh explained nga that you start sort of from inside out. Kasi
Yes.
nung una, I was going like,
That was
so
good advice.
how do you make sure that the skin is not, sort of like,
Nahamak or anything.
yeah, it's like spill over dun sa shirt. You
We
start
actually
from
have
the
an admin, si Milo. He paints the eyes first.
Mm.
oh
Kasi yun na yung pinakaloob. And that's the hardest. So basically, you just put white, and then a black line, and then you just paint the flesh na outside. So it can be cheated. Just make sure it's dry after you paint it.
right.
Tapos na yung laban.
Yep. Ako, I paint eyes first.
Ayun. Ako last
Ang,
time, masokista.
ang hirap ng ice eh. Yung yung line, yung hindi ko alam gawin. That's the one where
Yeah,
I'm
you don't want a
having
dueling
time with.
miniature. Yan yung mahirap.
Well,
I mean, it's
that's
hard
the
even
ano eh.
on TV.
Honestly, that's why I paint eyes first. Kasi if I make a mistake, it's okay. I'm gonna go over it. Like I can
Yeah.
keep making that error because eventually I'm gonna cover over that,
Correct.
so it doesn't
Correct.
look, not a person.
That actually brings up a pretty good question. Is there any, well, I guess from eyes being an example, are there particularly challenging things to paint with the minis that you guys have worked on?
Mm-mm. Ikaw, Louie. Ako, for me, I guess it depends on there are certain colors that are known to be problematic colors within the miniature painting hobby. The biggest example is white. White, it might seem simple, but it can actually be pretty challenging to paint white because you're not actually supposed to paint white. Like that's the ironic part. When you paint white on miniatures, you're really painting very light gray. A very light gray or a very off-white color. You're only ever going to get to pure white when you do highlights. Another problematic color for some people is yellow. Um, there's that tendency kasi with both yellow and white for the paints to be clumpy. So that's another chalky, clumpy, and that's why there's a problem for some people to be painting those colors.
That's why it's
That's a
difficult to
good.
paint
That's a good.
yellow.
Case.
I now also recall how I messed up
That's why
that
yellow
the
sucks.
chest of the wrapper.
Yay, my
Because you
question
just-
my question actually made sense.
Look at that. That's so difficult to do. Yellow and
Yeah.
white.
Yeah. So just have to be patient with it. Thin
Yep.
line, thin layers. Let it rest or blow dryer it.
Tsaka ano rin eh, with those colors talaga, that's where the primer situation comes in. If you're going to be painting with white and yellow, don't use a black primer.
Some
Because
people
it's
would
going
prime
to
with
take-
white or prime
Yeah,
with yellow.
yeah, you can. But
Prime
like,
this with white.
yeah, don't prime with black. Like, okay, you can prime with black, but it's gonna take you a while to get to that white that you want. Especially if you want a nice looking smooth white, like from a gray to a white.
This
Medyo
is a
mahirap
good
yung
example of why I actually have an easy time painting white over black. Kasi I paint a lot of black Templar, which is, these guys.
Uh-oh.
And I prime them with black because they're dominantly black. But their shoulder pads are super white. So when I'm priming him with black, I paint the shoulder pad a gray. And then I wash it because I'm doing the steps. And then as I highlight, I go from gray to light gray and then eventually white. As opposed to painting like 500 layers of white, I'm just painting maybe two layers of paint of different colors. So black, then gray, then white. Same rin if this was yellow. If this was yellow, I'd paint yellow over this white. Magiging yellow yung shoulder pad ng miniature na yan. So this is the sky blue that I painted on top of the white. Below the white, then magiging white siyang ganyan. So there's that type of cheat to go about it. That's where undercoating helps.
I'll be right back. I'll be changing my paint color na.
Sige.
My water, because we'll get into washing now.
That's a good step.
While Josh changes his water,
Take a shot. Take a shot.
and take a shot. I mean, in digital design, we would have this sort of, it's not always that if I need to highlight something, I need to add.
Yeah.
So sometimes I need to make the sort of the
Surrounding
things
areas
around it darker, or make that go sort of into the background in order for me to highlight. Because sometimes you'd go like, well, I want a bright blue. You could do that, but it's not going to work by just putting white on it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's already a light blue. But if you start, creating shadows or sort of sending the other colors around it to the background, and if you can think of it like a 3D space, then you're able to now put that lighter one into the foreground. So sometimes just simply a black and a red and a gray and red. The red is the same color, but it would change in sort of brightness.
Actually, what you're talking about is a popular term that a lot of people like to use in miniature painting. They just call it contrast. So there's contrast in colors, contrast in lighting. Sometimes if you like the shade of blue, like you specifically said, but you don't want to brighten it, add more contrast by putting orange around it as the contrasting color, or making a darker blue at the side. That typically works.
Here's an interesting one. Have you guys ever worked with transparent minis? Like the D&D board games have like elementals that are translucent figs.
Yeah. You can use...
Louis, I'll let you take this one. Contrast paint, please.
So like when I first attended the Pilipintado paint workshop, I was just there as a visitor. And Milo and Josh were like going crazy over this guy who painted a D&D miniature with a see-through elemental miniature. And the guy, I said, how did you do that? The guy just took, this is called Citadel Contrast Color. And basically, this is the brand of paint that Games Workshop made that combines the last hour of painting that Josh did and probably the next 10 minutes that Josh is about to do in one step. Mm-hmm. So this paint is the quote-unquote miracle paint. I say that with heavy bunny ears because, it's how you apply it. Basically, that guy that I'm talking about, he just took this paint and applied it. This is basically a heavy wash. It's like a watered-down acrylic, but not as watered down as a wash, so that it tints the surface, it doesn't slide off the surface. So if I have a blue underneath this, the blue becomes darker, and the kilikili of that blue becomes extra darker. Wow. So it's a tint and a shade. So what he did is he took the transparent elemental effect, and he tinted and shaded at the same time. If you don't have this, you can replicate it washing it.
That goes to the follow-up here. Are there cheaper alternatives to it?
Patay.
Yes. So I don't have the cheaper alternative, but you can mix. You can mix paints by sort of, for example, adding thinner. Thinner is actually just paint without the pigment. This is just the medium, so it's transparent. And adding a normal type of paint. So instead of adding water, I am not breaking down the chemical. I'm medyo scientific, but to better understand, paint is three things: the medium, which is acrylic, the pigment, which is the color, and then water. When we do miniature painting, we're always adding water. But the more water you add, you break apart the two elements and it doesn't behave like paint. But when you have paint and you just keep adding the medium, it's still the paint, less of the pigment, and you're not breaking it apart. So it still behaves like paint. That's a cheap way to get it. This is a 565 peso bottle of Deovir from Deovir airbrush thinner. This is just medium, and then this can last you for your whole hobby life, talaga. And just add this into your paint. It becomes watered down like a wash. That is a alternative.
Sorry, quick segue lang. I'm going to transfer from the miniature holder into my old pot of paint miniature holder. The reason why is with this one, you cannot paint the rims of the base because it's clamped onto it. But with the cheaper alternative, you can. And I want to paint the rim kasi. So that being said, I'm going to move on to the final step na of my demo today, and that is washing or shading. So what I have here, this is Citadel Agrax Earthshade. This is what is known as a shade wash. So what is a shade wash? I'm not sure how well you can see it, no? But if you notice, it's a lot more liquid. It's a lot more runnier than the regular paint.
Yeah, it looks like a shot of espresso.
Yeah.
I'm
just a little bit more. Not as
from that angle.
Yeah, there's a certain consistency lang. So espresso would still be a little bit more runny than that one.
Yeah.
But
Basically, this tastes like burnt toast. Don't ask.
Oh, that's okay. All right.
Anyway,
if ever,
I keep bringing this up as a joke, and just wow, you've done it. I am impressed and scared at the same time.
I wasn't like this when I started, man. Anyway, so what I'm gonna do now is, shade paints are what a lot of people like to refer to as "quote unquote" talent in a bottle, and the reason why is because it basically gets most of the detail parts for you. It does it for you by seeping into the little crevices and cracks of a miniature. So just to demo that, no, I'm going to get some dito. I'm going to be using this large brush because I want good coverage on this. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to slap it on. And can you put up the slide para makita nila yung example?
Slap on.
What it's going to do...
Ron, do you have the slides up? All right.
Yeah.
Ayun. So what it's going to do is it's going to go into all of the recesses and kind of darken it down a bit. So if you're familiar with Gundam, with Gunpla, I'm essentially panelining. And you can see that it goes into all of those cracks, all of those little crevices to give it some shading or that black lining. And in doing this, I'm basically done with most of the detail work now.
So that's actually what you were talking about, Ron. What Josh is doing, he's darkening everything that's below so that everything on top becomes highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's one color. It's just one giant brown puddle. So it doesn't look like it's a mishmash of colors. You're also tying in the whole miniature into like a neat bow tie.
And this kind of goes with your point earlier about watering down the paint. Like I can see that consistency is much it's different. So like it really gets into every nook and cranny of the fig.
Yeah. But you can't control it. Like it's just gonna go like that.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
But
more water, less control.
You can control it, but you need to put very little at a time.
Compared to a base coat, it's easier to control.
So it feels to me, in a digital perspective, it's like a color grading. So I'm like now looking at right. So you're tinting the whole piece now into sort of this look, general look.
Actually, there are some washes. They're actually called sepia wash. So talagang literal.
Right. There you go.
Yep. Though the tinting part is actually just the side effect of it. The
Yes.
main point talaga for shading is to get into all of those nooks and crannies. To get into all of those little areas here and there para makulayan
Some
and para
people would
ma-shade.
actually prime a miniature white, and then they would skip base coating. They would just put a wash.
Oo, para
So
makulayan
I
agad.
I painted the zombie once white, tapos I put a brown wash para magmuang muddy yung skin niya. And then that's it. That was the whole miniature na. So you can speed paint like
Nice.
that also.
Oh, there,
It's
that's
still-
yeah, that's a very nice like glossy finish to it.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
this will
even
matte
if,
down. This will matte down
Yeah.
when it dries.
when it
and
dries.
it
But you
really
get to see the
highlights
shadows are
the,
all the
yeah,
same also.
nagpop talaga yung edges niya.
Yeah.
If
With
you have
just,
yeah, the slide kasi has a better picture for this.
okay naman, kita
Para
naman
makita
siya.
yung talaga.
Yeah.
What I like about washes kasi is it ties it all together. Like kanina, Josh had like a mishmash of gold, white, red. I mean, in a battlefield, that looks a bit gaudy. But when you put a wash, it's like a shadow looms over the entire miniature, and then now it just coalesces
Yeah,
into
and
a
also
nice
it kind of
miniature.
fills in with a little bit of like, I'm not gonna say wear and tear, but it kind of just doesn't have like a flat color to it.
It doesn't look like ay pininturahan to. Look.
But the thing kasi with washes is there are several different kinds. Ayun na, there we go. There are several different kinds of washes. Different colors, obviously. You have this one is a brown one. There's another one that's like black. There's a sepia one, as Louis mentioned. But the thing is, though, you can't use like there is no one shade color for everything. Because in this case, the reason why I used brown is because it's earthy, and that's the kind of idea that I want for this miniature. Like earthy tone siya, na para the brown kind of meshes well with everything. But if I'm going to use that same tone on a miniature that's like mostly white and I want it to look pristine, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look pristine at all. It's going to look dirty. So know which wash to use and when. Like there are times that you're not even going to use a wash because you don't want to dirty things up or you don't
Yeah.
want to shade things to that degree of contrast.
And sometimes people would opt to just rather water down a base coat so they can control the area of where they want to put the shadow.
Mhm.
Sometimes they find the wash too watery and they want something in between. They get a base coat, then they add a little bit more water than the usual.
So the last thing I'm doing here, and this is just like, you don't need to do this, I like doing this, is to paint the rim of the base.
They call that the victory lap. When you're done,
This is the victory
Nice.
lap.
I guess for board gamers, you could color code na your miniature using this technique.
Right.
Right.
Lalo
Actually,
na
in
sa
board
ano,
gaming
like,
also, ginagawa rin yan kapag horde army ka. And you can't tell which person belongs to which squad. Yan, you just color the theme.
like with with board gaming, like Scythe, like
Yeah.
or like Blood Rage siguro.
Right.
Well, Blood Rage has the rings, so if
It has
you
the ring,
painted if you painted the fig, you'd still be covering it up with the ring.
But I would recommend to, before you start playing, actually for all board games, before you start playing, let your miniature rest for maybe 45 minutes, then varnish it. Kasi, you're going to be holding it, we have oils, you're going to be scratching it. That really just protects the paint job. Especially if you're going to be
Speaking of
scratching it
that,
with ring.
Speaking of that, yes.
please suggest a clear coat or varnish for board
Okay.
gaming.
Ayan. That's a planted
That's-
question. Milo Alejo knows the answer. to that question.
Milo knows this.
Ah,
Okay, so just like priming, so I'm just gonna wait for this one to dry, So I'm basically done with it. So just like priming, there are different ways for you to varnish your miniature. So
Okay,
the first
boss
way,
lang.
obviously, is spray cans. So Bosni also has as a clear coat. But I like my varnishes to look a bit smoother. So the varnish I use is Tamiya. This is mainly for, other than the Tamiya cars, I use this for my Gundam models as well. Very smooth yung finish niya.
This looks
This is
sealed. Do
Tamiya.
you have a case of this as well?
I have a case of this as well. Yes.
Nice eye, nice eye.
Um,
Good eye, good eye.
this is TS80. This is their flat clear varnish. Like I said, very smooth. It mattes the entire thing down, which I like. I like a matte looking miniature instead of a glossy one. But there are also several kinds. Like there is flat, there is gloss, there is semi gloss, depending on what finish you want your miniatures to have. The other, ano naman, the other kind of varnish is like before, mga brush on. Like ito, this
Yeah.
is, sorry, my light is not agreeing with me.
Ito, si
But
Armored
this,
Komodo, meron siyang ano. Ay, hindi pala brush on to. Joke lang.
like this is, you can brush this on. This is a flat top coat, and the other one naman is a gloss top coat. Like if you want to combine them, you can. Para semi-gloss, you can combine these two. Have a semi-gloss, have a semi-gloss varnish. And the third way nga is airbrush. I don't have an airbrush, but you would basically use
spray
these
can.
paints as well.
So, when it's a gloss, it's shinier, but it's also slippery. So, it may affect how your paint job looks. Kasi it reflects more light, but ideally it can bounce off more dust. But if it's matte, there's less light hitting the miniature. You see more of the paint job. But also, mas kakapit dyan yung dumi-dumi. But it's varnished. You can just wipe it off the paint, probably protected.
Mm-hmm. So these two Chaos Warriors here, this is how it's gonna look like pag dry na sila. No? This one I painted last night. This one I painted just this morning. Actually for the slides, that's why I painted another one. So this is how they look like pag fully dry na sila. Like you're going to see na the wash really matted it down, really dirtied it up. And that's that's the look
really
that I
good.
was going for.
Really
And
nice.
it brought all those elements together.
Oh, a question. Here we go. Do you need the thin brush? Do you need wait? Do you need a thin brush
No,
on
big.
varnish?
Go
or-
big. Go big. Pag ganun. Kasi you want like to apply an even coat. So go a bit big with your brush.
Yeah, go a bit big with the brush. Because what you don't want to happen is for one part of the varnish to dry while the rest is still wet, or like the rest
Ginagalaw mo pa habang
di mo pa
dinadry,
nilalagyan ng
sisira.
varnish. Kasi what's going to happen is you're going to have uneven varnish. So you really want to all in one go.
Apply it quick
to-
and then let it dry together.
Yeah.
All right.
Kasi yun na, same goes with painting, honestly. You want to make sure that the coat you're painting is already dry before moving on to the next step or the second layer, because you really don't want to break up that film that forms.
Yes, tama si Milo. On a big brush for varnish, be careful with bubbles. You don't need for thinning. The question meant to thin.
Oh,
with
there
water.
he clarified.
Yeah,
Yes, even
you should thin.
water.
I used to
Yes,
have
you should,
Vallejo. Yeah, it's basically a medium without It's paint without the pigment, so it's still water and the medium. So you still have to water it down. I personally use Bosny flat, Bosny matte flat clear or matte clear. That's what I get.
Okay. So, well, for all of the board gamers, as you can see, with all of the side comments and the entertaining questions and all of the breaks, so less than just a little over 2 hours. One fully painted miniature you just need to wait to dry, and
With
You
daldala na
have-
yan.
with kwentuhan pa yon.
Oo.
And so kasama na yung Star Trek and board game
Oo.
recommendations. So kung binilang mo ilan ang mix sa scythe, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. I mean, it's less
Oh.
intimidating now that you can sort of see that that's. Well, I hope that when I finally get to try this out, that I can at least somewhat get near to that. But I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I think with Pilipintados, if you guys are not yet in the group and you're interested in learning how to paint, I think that this group is really a good resource for local content in terms of learning how to paint.
Yep.
Because I learned quite a lot in just a few days of meeting these people and following their social media posts, and they also have you guys have a lot of events on a regular basis, right? Can you talk a little bit more before we sort of close off the episode? Can you guys talk more about like what is normally how you
Sure.
guys work in
Yes.
Pilipintados?
So basically, we give out free stuff every month.
Wow.
Essentially.
But yeah,
Wow. Oh.
we hold painting competitions that Josh spearheads. 2 painting
Okay.
competitions every month, and then it's a community. It's most of the time community chosen, but some
Mhm.
instances there are judges, special guests, and what you should watch out for are sponsorships. Like this month, we have a sponsor for Warhammer month. So
Mhm.
Pilipintados, you can join now and avail. Pilipintados actually have a 10% discount off Warhammer
Oh.
products in neutral grounds.
Wow.
Because this week until the middle of the month, this month until the middle, there's a Warhammer themed painting competition.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Ludus and Neutral Grounds is sponsoring that. So apart from the comments and suggestions, the learning, people sharing and feedbacks, a lot of the hype is people just saying, "Oh, I want to donate my 3D prints to the next winner," or "Oh, I have extra paints. When's the next contest?" Or "Oh, I have a bag of chips. Pasama na sa prize fund." And then
We're not kidding, huh? One of our
yeah,
sponsors was King Su Ham.
Hey,
we didn't
Oh.
know what to do, man. But like,
Because like they're
paint the ham. That's what you do.
yeah.
so
Kid
it's
bash it.
thematic. It's for everyone. We have kids, like Josh mentioned, underage kids.
Mhm.
Also, we have couples, people getting married. Ang kulang na lang aso na nagpe-paint. Yun na lang yung kulang.
Okay. Okay.
Goals,
Yeah.
goals.
Goals.
So ako,
Yeah.
what I personally like about the community that we've managed to build up is that it's not us that's teaching it. Like if ever we do a workshop na kami lang, it's gonna be very structured, and that's honestly kind of rare for us to do. Lalo na ngayon pandemic. But
Yeah.
prior to the pandemic, kasi we used to do a lot of live in-person workshops sponsored by Neutral Grounds, by Ludus, ganon, by Hubs and Lands.
Right.
But
About mining, alam mo naman.
a good chunk of the lesson plans, I don't even want to call them lesson plans, but a good chunk of the information comes from people mismo, just sharing their experiences,
Yeah.
sharing their stuff.
I mean, just
Cheat
following
sheet.
our stream, and with the amount of people asking questions, it's like just right then and there, people are also responding and giving their comments. So it's a very proactive community. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna leave you hanging. I know how to do this. You guys
Yeah.
don't. It's a very like people really share, and I think that is such a gold mine, and it's a very welcoming space. So I am really
Some-
quite impressed.
Sorry,
And
someone asked, Jerry Young asked, is it okay to mix different brands of paint? For the most part, yes, but it depends as well.
Basta same medium.
Like,
All acrylics.
What's the same medium? Like if it's acrylic and enamel, chances are hindi.
Yes.
yes, because it's like
It's
oil and water. They don't
yeah,
mix
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like chemical reactions.
So if you really want to find out, you have to experiment. Like I can say for sure, Citadel and Vallejo are gonna mix very well because that's what I do.
Okay, cool.
I think that kind of goes back to the point that Ron was making that it's your community seems to be really like vocal about sharing their experiences and best practices, and that's a very good thing. I mean, from the board gaming community, we can recommend games, but it's like you have really active participation in your hobby that you're actually like building something or painting something. So all of the information is really experience.
Milo mentioned that it's your second anniversary on July.
Yes. July is our second anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah, stay tuned
Amazing.
for that.
Amazing.
Get signed up for that.
Yeah.
Well,
We appreciate the support. I mean, you guys have been a better builder community builders longer than us. So we're really looking to you guys for advice
Mm.
well,
also.
thank you. It's not been it's a I think
With
we've
our
also
quote unquote professionalism and work ethic, it's a surprise people even watch us.
yeah. But I think it's more of like what we realize is that over the years we were able to sort of build a platform where we can um, give a voice, and we are constantly amazed on like how many other people are also trying to do the same, and we realize, hey, maybe we can sort of collaborate and shout louder and sort of just get more people into the hobby. Oh, hindi ka mahilig sa board game. So problem, magaling ka mag-paint. O dito ka. O mahilig ka mag-paint. Pero parang interested ka rin into playing games. And it's a very, there's so many intersections in our hobby, from role-playing games, tabletop games, to miniature painting. Again, yun nga, we just like to play with small toys.
Yeah.
That is
that doesn't really die out, does it?
No, we are just kids at heart, and now we can afford more though, so that's a good thing. All right.
Right?
So I think medyo nawawalan na rin yung data ni. So actually, Denmark had to log off because his data was already capping out, and maybe
Ah.
even uh, Louis. Okay,
Yeah.
Oh, no.
all right. So, but this has been amazing, guys. I'm super thankful for the Pilipintados community. You guys are the best, the coolest, and I really hope that you guys can share more. So if you guys have can create YouTube channels, please tuloy nyo yung YouTube show nyo na parangan sineskwela. Sorry for the age reference.
And that was my one of my goals talaga, yung
Oh, really?
sineskwela vibes,
Oh, yeah. It
panlasang
is so,
Pinoy vibes.
yeah, it's so amazing. Tagalog kasi siya, and then the
Mm.
the pacing and how it was presented. I'm like, huh, I feel like I've learned something today, even if I'm not sure if I did.
Yeah.
But yun, so I think I need to practice it, and then of course I'll be sharing it with you guys.
Mm.
But thank you everyone for
Yes.
2 hours 30 minutes. You guys are still
Yeah,
here.
this is like one of our longest episodes,
Yes.
but I have to say it's been very informative. There's been so much feedback from
There we go.
the community, so it's really great to have so much people involved in one of these episodes while learning. Who would have thought in our show? So
Yes, exactly right. Learning and Variableplay. Welcome back, Josh. So
yeah, you're right in time
Louis-
for the closer.
Louis,
All
are
right.
you with us?
how's
Louis.
your data? Yeah, I think the rolling blackouts is also affecting probably data.
Nightmare.
Okay,
Nightmare.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So, any sort of invitation for the tabletop community in general to try out
Yeah, plugs.
painting, and then we'll send them off.
Yes. So first off, thank you guys so much for having us on your stream. This was such a great opportunity for us to kind of share our craft and to share our hobby with everyone else, lalo na sa board game community. For invitations, really, join Pilipintados. Like,
Yes.
we have a lot of events lined up for this year. We have a lot of competitions that we do every month. Our sponsorships are growing by the day, and thank you so much then to all of our sponsors who have worked with us in the past. Follow our individual pages as well. Like, Louis isn't here, but I want you guys hopefully to follow his channel on YouTube and his Facebook page, Louis Loves Minis. He does more of this vlogging stuff more than I do. I just like post pictures, whatever. But he does mainly the blogging stuff, and he does a lot of really good content for getting into the hobby and staying in the hobby, lalo na in the Philippine setting. Ako naman, well, I teach this stuff. Not so much anymore because of the pandemic, but I always post works in progress of the different stuff that I work on. You can follow me on YouTube and on Facebook. I am Juice Ministetics. That's mini aesthetics, ministetics. So, ayun.
I like it.
And then what else? Yeah, that's basically it. If you have any questions, you can always, join Pilipintados, ask there, post about it. You can message my page or Louis' page. Actually, for this presentation, I made slides, no, to watch along as I painted. But since didn't have much time for it, I'll be posting it in my group, in my page, lalo and sorry, in my page as well as in the Pilipintados group, so that you guys can check it out as well.
Nice.
All right,
All right.
Louis, and uh, well,
Louis,
how's your net? Can you hear us well?
Yan kasi Ultramarines. Oh, ano?
Ang daya. Anyway,
yeah, no, we
oh,
might
siya.
lose him. Yes, so you know
Okay.
what? I also turned this over to the Pilipintados community that, if you guys have any interest in board gaming, we'd like to invite you also to join the Variableplay network, where we have a lot of board game based content. As we are inviting, of course, all of the members of the VP community to, look into painting minis. And I typically close these episodes with telling everyone to keep gaming, but for today, you know what? Keep painting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you
Have a
guys so
good
much.
day.
Thank you.